What's going on, guys? Hope you guys are doing well. So if you guys have ever watched one of my YouTube videos, this is far and away the best YouTube video I've ever created. I'm fully confident in that. The reason why is because over the past 6 months, I've been essentially compiling all of this stuff to essentially teach you, whether you're an info product owner or you're an agency owner, growth operator, exactly what's working right now in the info product space. Not stuff that was working a couple years ago and that I listened to and regurgitated from a bunch of other people that you watch online, but this is the stuff that I'm actively doing with my offers right now, that I'm actively consulting people, consulting operators on, and this is genuinely more value than probably 5 or 6 consulting calls that someone would pay me for, just because this is everything I've been accumulating over this entire year distilled into one video. So with that being said, I don't want to gas it up too much. Let's get right into it. So here I have some proof of some guys I've worked with in the past, obviously not including a lot of the guys that I work with currently, but just to show you that I'm legit. And I think that if you listen to this video for more than a few minutes, you're going to understand that I know what I'm talking about. But either way, this is going to be every single thing that you need to know about scaling info products to $1 million a month and beyond in 2026. So this is, like I said, everything that's working today and everything that's not working today, so that we know not to do those things. Exactly what I'm actively doing with all my done for you and consulting clients right now, and things that I'm teaching people in real time, and the exact strategies and decision-making process that you need to start implementing now and start making your offer or your client's offers more money. So on the topic of offers, let's get into phase 1, which is about creating the best offers and what's working right now in the info space and what's not working. So the offer always has been and always will be the end-all be-all. And amazing offers allow average creators and operators to get outsized return and vice versa. And what I'm saying is that, I've seen some offers or some offer owners where, objectively, they don't have the biggest audience, they don't have the best paid marketers, they don't have the best, team in general, but they end up doing more revenue than a lot of people in the space who have bigger audiences, better teams, all that kind of stuff, just because the offer essentially carries them. Same thing with, if I'm being honest, people who I've seen their clients where, they're not the best operator in the world, but they work with the right offers and the right creators who have the right offers, and they end up making way more money than anyone else. And let's talk about why, because the offer is ultimately the product. And I think that it's very underrated these days in info to, a lot of people think that, oh, I need the biggest following, I need the best paid funnels, I need the best sales team, whatever. The offer is like the thing that if you mess this up, it's going to make everything so much harder. And if you get this right, it's going to make everything so much easier. So like I said, if everything feels insanely easy, it's probably your offer. And if everything feels insanely hard, it's probably your offer. So I've used this in other YouTube videos, but essentially this is the way that an info product runs at a core level. It's, you have your leads, you have organic, you have paid, you push them through your conversion mechanisms, they go into your sales process, and then they have buying or not buying. And the offer is essentially the magnet that pulls those leads in. So if you're doing a paid campaign, you have a really good offer, it's going to pull in stronger leads. Like that magnet is going to work harder and get you more leads. Whereas if you don't have the best offer, that magnet is going to have a really weak pull, and you're going to notice that all of your stats throughout the funnel just look weak. Same thing on organic. Even if you have 50,000 followers with a mediocre offer, you're going to get X result. But if you have 50,000 followers with an insane offer and a very well-positioned offer, you're going to get way better results. So no matter how saturated info or your niche gets, there is never a bad time for an offer that's positioned well. And I've learned that firsthand this year. So a good offer, like I said, is going to pull every single stat in your funnel up, and a bad offer is going to pull every single stat in your funnel down. So you might be wondering, okay, how can I gauge if my offer is good, or if I'm starting with a creator from scratch, how can I create a perfectly positioned offer from scratch? So we're going to get into it. So really, the offer has 3 main components. It's the niche, the positioning and the ICP that you're selling to, and the packaging and the deliverables. So first thing, pretty self-explanatory, the niche. It's just a simple fact these days, not all niches are created equal. So selling niches like Amazon, e-com, SMMA in 2026, like they're just offers that the market has been fatigued on. And don't get me wrong, there are still people that do really good numbers with these, but I'm just saying pound for pound, if you're going to work with an Amazon creator or a creator that has a really well-positioned offer, I would go with the second one 10 times out of 10. Selling AI offers, well-positioned offers for high net worth people, and really just offers that appeal to adults versus like 19-year-old kids, it's much easier far and away. And again, one big theme that I want to keep coming back to in this video, especially if you're an operator, you get to pick your battles. So you need to be very intentional about the clients that you choose, because I've learned this year firsthand, and I already knew this, but you just keep getting reminded of this, working with the right people long-term will yield you so much more of a result than working with mediocre people. And I just, for all my operators out there, it's super intentional about who you work. Next thing, when it comes to the offer, and the second component is the positioning. So The niche is kind of the first layer, but really what matters even more than the niche is who you're selling to. Because at the end of the day, like if your end buyers are good customers, you're gonna have a lot easier time. Whereas if your end buyers have no money, you're gonna have a lot harder of a time. So again, selling to like 18-year-olds that need Clarity Pay for a $500 offer is getting much harder. And selling to business owners, boomers, moms, etc., people who just have purchasing power, people who have excess capital that they can put to work, that's obviously way easier. And at that point, you don't have to, a lot of like B2C sales process is about essentially like, how do I take someone's money from them because they barely have any? Whereas like when you start selling a little bit more upstream and you're working with people who have an abundance of money or just, more capital on hand than, this bucket, your whole life just becomes a lot easier, and you still have problems, but they're different problems. So let's say you're locked down on your niche and your positioning, exactly, what niche you're selling in and what the offer is, exactly who you're selling to and, your ideal client. But the final component now is your packaging. So the packaging is essentially the delivery of your services and the way that you convey it in your marketing. So the standard like info stack of curriculum, coaching calls, community, like again, that's like the bare minimum these days. Back in 2023, like that would work fine. You slap Inner Circle on the back of your offer. You give them a course, you give them some coaching calls, you give them a community, and you can sell for $4,000 or $5,000 to organic no matter what. Whereas like now to scale on paid traffic, and we're going to get into this a lot more in this phase and also in later phases of the free course, you need to go more hands-on, more done for you, heavier on tools and resources that get them to that end destination sooner rather than later. So again, the ideal scenario, if you pull all three of these components together, is that you're selling in a niche that doesn't have a million people selling offers. And if this is the case, like if your niche is very competitive, you need to figure out how to position yourself against them or just outcompete them. You want to be selling to an ICP that has higher purchasing power, and you want to have a well-packaged offer that is as hands-on as humanly possible. So I hope I didn't go too fast there, but essentially you want to sell in the right niche, you want to be selling to the right people, and you want to be selling the right offer. And we're going to get into more detail about this. But once you reach this destination, the best thing you can possibly do to make your life easier on scaling on paid traffic is selling as high ticket as you possibly can. So let's talk about how you do this. So you need to think about this. What is the highest value solution I can provide to a specific person? So for example, getting a 50-year-old business executive in shape, someone who's been struggling with this for decades and even after all the money is deeply insecure about it, is a much higher value solution than someone who's, skinny fat, getting them in shape. Because obviously this person has a lot more pain in their situation. They will pay more for this solution versus someone, who could lose 5-10 pounds. Like that's not a very valuable solution in the grand scheme of things. So it really all starts with the person that you're selling to. How can you take your specific niche expertise and position it towards someone who can simply pay more for it? Like if I'm a fitness coach, how do I start selling to this person who will pay me way more to get them a result versus this person who might pay me a little bit, but at the end of the day, they're not in that much pain and I'm not producing that valuable of a result for this person. So once you decide on who that person is, so you need to be able to look at your specific niche or your client's niche, like who is the best person that we can sell to? If I'm in real estate, can I sell to someone who already has an existing real estate business and get them a more valuable solution? If I'm a fitness coach, again, I just gave you the example. If I have some kind of like investment offer, how do I sell more upstream to people who have like, accredited investors who have way more capital on hand, who are willing to, put more capital into this and get more out of it? So again, this is kind of like the solution I chose here. If you help people invest in crypto and you work with someone who has $10,000 in capital, like the standard like crypto mastermind that teaches you, how to pick the right meme coins and all that kind of stuff, you might be able to get them like a 10, 50, maybe like $100,000 ROI if we're in a crazy bull run. But realistically, let's say that if they come in with $10,000 in capital, you get them a $10,000 ROI on it. So if that person paid you $5,000, you technically took half of what you got them. Whereas if you work with someone, and I know you guys are just gonna say like, oh yeah, well like this would be nice if I could work with someone who has $5 million. But we have offers that do exactly this. If you work with someone who has $5 million to invest, you can make them $500,000 in their sleep and charge 10% of what you make them easily. So again, like what is this ROI worth to them? If someone comes in with $5 million and I can make them $500,000 and I charge them 50, they got a great deal. Whereas if someone comes in with $10,000 and I make them $10,000 but I charge them 5, they only 2x on what they paid me. So it's more about this principle of like, who can I get the biggest transformation? Who can I get the result for that is worth the most amount of money? And then how do I charge them in accordance to that result I got them? So again, it's all about finding someone where your service is able to produce massive value for them and you can charge in accordance for it. So even like me, if I take a step back and look at my own service, let's say hypothetically, I could help software companies, info companies, and local businesses, all with my exact same skill set of writing copy, running ads, being a fractional CMO, all that kind of stuff. And let's say objectively, like I crush it for all three of these companies. I crush it for my software clients, I crush it for my info clients, and I start taking on local businesses and I crush it for them too. For the local business, let's say I get them an ROI of 50,000. For an info business, I might make them 500K a month with the exact same like inputs. Maybe there's a little bit more time for the info company than the local business, but let's say, I give it my all and I make them 50K a month. For an info business, I might make them 500K. But for a software company, I might add $5 million in enterprise value to their company, all from the same effort. So again, it's just me taking my skill set and positioning it to essentially my premium customer. Like, who is my dream ICP that I could, put the same amount of time and effort in for and just get them a way bigger outsized return. So you need to figure out for your client or for your offer how to position your service or your creator's niche expertise into a more premium customer, but there also needs to be a big enough TAM to actually scale. So like if you're a crypto offer and you want to work with people who have over $100 million, like there's not gonna be a big enough TAM to scale into that and pay traffic. But you start working with people who have over $1 million liquid, there's a lot of millionaires out there. So there's a lot of people that you can scale that offer to, and realistically you just have to think to yourself, like, am I gonna be able to run paid traffic to this niche for years on end? So to bring it back down to earth for most B2C people, because again, I might have just gone a little bit extreme there. Obviously, I know some of you guys who watch my channel work with like these bigger offers that sell to more higher net worth people. But again, this is just like a simple positioning shift. If you're selling to like new college grads and people who like hate their 9 to 5, and you use specific messaging, like if you hate your 9 to 5, you never want to go again, and you need something to replace your income next month, like you're going to attract the worst kind of people. And essentially your ceiling of what you can charge is much lower than selling to like retirees, biz owners, higher net worth people, corporate professionals, all that kind of stuff. So changing that positioning and who you're selling to is the very first step of selling higher ticket. So I know like a lot of people call info high ticket. I would say what I'm more so leaning towards now with my clients and kind of the people that I work with is selling higher ticket. So not like high ticket info, 3 to 5K. I'm talking higher ticket, like 10, 20, 30, $50,000 packages. So that might bring you to the question, why should I even want to sell higher ticket? That sounds like, a way more complicated sales process. It sounds a lot scarier. Why would I want to do that? So 3 main reasons. 1, the unit economics. 2, you're selling to better customers, kind of like we've talked about right now, and it opens the door to continuation, cross sales, et cetera, and really being able to maximize your LTV. So let's get into all 3 of those. So first one, biggest one from my perspective as a marketer is the unit economics. You're gonna learn this the hard way if you're watching this video. If you have an AOV of like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, you need to run like an airtight funnel to be able to pull like a 3 to 4x ROI. Like if you're running a webinar and your AOV at the end of the webinar funnel, if you're booking sales calls, it's like $4,000. You go and run a financial model on that, you're gonna find that you have very little margin for error. Whereas like if you have an AOV of $10,000 or more, you can afford to have a lot more margin for error and have a much easier time scaling. So I could have the exact same webinar funnel, I could have the exact same call funnel, and if my AOV at the end of it is $9,000 instead of $4,000, all of a sudden I have way more margin for error for my show rate to tank, my ad costs on the front end to go up, my closers to have a bad week, and I'm still profitable. Whereas like when you work with these like standard info products for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, you have very little margin for error. And again, this is all through the lens of like you get to pick your battles. Sure, you might pride yourself on being the best marketer in the world, and you can run a webinar funnel at a 3x ROAS, and even though your client only has a $4,000 AOV. All I'm saying is that your life would be a lot easier and you would get way better results if you were working with these higher ticket offers. So again, this is just an example of a financial model. So like exact same scenario here. $10,000 in spend, and I'll go through like this is kind of like normal results for what I would say like a normal high ticket info product, like a $3,000 to $5,000. So let's say your cost per call is $180. You cancel 20% of your calls just due to like non-responsiveness, bad leads, whatever. So you have 80% of your calls that you keep. You have a show rate of 40%. You have a close rate of 30%, and your average cash per call on a $4,000 or $5,000 offer is $3,500. So the way that the numbers shake out here, and again, these are all like I would say very realistic numbers. Like if you're actually good at running the offer, like you should be able to get your show rate a bit higher. This number is like relatively accurate. Same thing here. Close rate again decent. Average cash per call. If you only have a $4,000 or $5,000 offer, like this is probably where you're going to sit. And your ROAS on this scenario is like just under a 2 to 1. So it's like, okay, to get this up to like a 3 to 1, you have to liquidate a bunch of your cash through downsells. You need to figure out how to get this cash per call up by maybe doing more financing so that we get more of that money up front. But again, this whole scenario is just like an uphill battle. Whereas like again, and this is all hypothetical, and I'm just showing you guys for the sake of an example. Let's say I spend that same $10,000. My cost per call goes up by damn near 50%. I'm paying $250 cost per call. My cancellation rate goes up, so I only keep 70% of my calls as opposed to 80% here. My show rate is fucking awful. I put it at 35%, sorry, not 30. So my show rate drops, my close rate stays the same at 30%, but my cash per call now, I'm selling a higher ticket offer, is $9,500 as opposed to $3,500. Now I'm at a 3-to-1. And my cost per call went up 50%, my cancellation rate went up, my show rate's awful. And in this scenario, I'm still at a pretty healthy 3-to-1. And this isn't including any downsells or anything like that. So, you might be like, yeah, like that's how math works. And again, I'm not doing this for the purpose of showing you how a financial model works. I'm showing you this because, especially for my operators out there, but also for my info owners, you need to figure out how to either work with people if you're an operator who sell higher ticket, or if you're an offer owner, you need to figure out how to have higher ticket packages. Because the point is, like I keep saying, that you get to choose your battles. I would much rather be in situation number 2 than situation number 1, which is why I always think through the lens of charging higher ticket and working with offers that are actually selling to an ICP that has higher purchasing power. Because if I'm in this scenario where I have a lot more slack on my line, and my cost per call can go up, and I'm not really too concerned about it. I can have a bad week with my show rate. My cancellation percentage can go up because I hit a spotty pocket with my lead quality. Like, all these different things can happen, and I'm still very profitable. And when I start nailing all of those things down, and I get my cost per call down sub 200, I get my show rate back up. Like, these numbers are honestly pretty bad across the board, and I'm still at a 3-to-1, so I can get to like a 5-to-1 when I really dial everything in. Whereas like here, to get this to a 5-to-1 just off of numbers, like I'm gonna have to be like essentially the best marketer, operator, and have the best sales team in the world to get this scenario to a 5-to-1. So again, it's all about like choosing your battle. So again, if you're an offer owner, learn how to sell a higher ticket and sell to a better ICP. If you're an operator, lean towards those offers that are actually selling higher ticket and to better customers. So again, point number 2, you're selling to better customers at these price points. So the worst customers from like an ethics and fulfillment perspective are the people who are taking their last dollar on financing. They basically have to make this work, or they're like dead broke. They come in with insane expectations and etc., which is like what most of the standard like B2C info guys are doing. They're like rinsing people on financing. They're getting people in, giving them crazy expectations. They're going to need every single star to align and everything to go right for them to actually make their money back. Whereas like situation number 2, which is the person with higher purchasing power, they probably come in with way more realistic expectations. They're much easier to work with. And in situation number 2, you can get to $1 million a month if you have $10,000, give or take, cash per call. You can get to $1 million a month on 100 clients. Whereas in situation number 1, you need 300 clients. So again, onboarding 300 pain in the ass clients every single month, compounded over time, can get really messy. Whereas like you get to 50 to 100 client range per month to do $1 million a month, that's a lot more manageable, and with the right, fulfillment side of things like CSMs and all that kind of stuff, like that's a lot better of a business to build long term. And then piggybacking off of number 2, working with these better customers opens the door for continuations, cross-sells, and just higher LTV. So one of the biggest downfalls of most info businesses is that they essentially have zero LTV past the customer's first purchase. So, they get someone for $3, $4, $5 on that first purchase, and then they never make $1 from them again. And most businesses don't work that way. Local service businesses, like they have really good LTV. Even e-com has really good LTV. Like all these businesses, software, they all like rely on LTV. Whereas like info, the reason why it can get so hard after a few years is because you're only making money off of your customers once for most of these B2C guys. Whereas like, again, the reason why this is the case is because they're usually just selling to people who have literally nothing left to pay them unless they see success with the business. Whereas like when you start going up market and you start selling more done for you, hybrid kind of stuff, there's way more opportunity for ascensions, affiliate revenue, kickbacks, partnerships, selling people continuation, all that kind of stuff. And that gives you even more like ammunition to bid as your ad costs go up. And like Hormozi always says, like the person who can pay the most for to acquire a customer wins, just because you know that you're making money off of your customers 2, 3, 4, 5 times, whereas your competitor is making $4,000 off of the customer one time and they have to run their entire business off of that. Whereas like me, if I work with an offer that charges higher ticket, we might make 10, 15K on the first time they pay us, but then, they pay us 10 or 15K the next year. And we have all these different ways of, making money through affiliate revenue and kickbacks. And, we have ascensions to higher ticket products and all that kind of stuff. Again, it all just stems from like, are you selling to someone who has $5,000 in their account, or are you selling to someone who has $50,000 in savings and, is regularly adding to their portfolio and their savings? So again, selling to the right people like just changes the entire paradigm. And you might be thinking like, okay, this all sounds really good, but like, how do I charge like $10,000 or more than that? Like, is that even possible for my niche? And the answer is this depends, because again, this all is kind of triangulating back to the same thing. Who are you selling? That's the first. If you're right now, all of your customers are people who all need financing, they all barely have any money, like you're gonna need to first change that. And then second, after you change the person you sell to, the outcome that you're actually getting them, how much is that outcome actually worth? Like, are you getting them into a real estate deal that is gonna pay them $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in profit a year and gets them a big tax write-off? Or like, are you helping them, I don't know, start like filling out surveys that makes them, $50 a week or whatever it might be. Again, it's just a random example and not actually serious. But like, how much is that ROI that you're getting them actually worth? And then the third thing is, can you continue getting that person new outcomes after the first outcome is reached? And I'm gonna get to that in a second. So let's take, for example, you're an Airbnb offer owner, or you have a client who does Airbnb. Yes, you can go for the standard, oh my God, like you can make $5,000 a month from Airbnb or Airbnb arbitrage. This is the easiest way to make money outside your 9 to 5. Here's this new hack, like watch a VSL and buy my $4,000 program. Or you could just completely change the person that you're selling to and sell to high income earners or business owners who need to lower their tax liability. And we'll run a completely done for you setup where we identify the market best suited for short-term rentals near you. We find the deal for you. We run projections, help you know your exact numbers. We get you the best lending options. We ensure a smooth close. We help you design and furnish it and create a theme that will crush on Airbnb. We create the listings for you, optimize for Airbnb. We do a hands-on launch, and we refer you to the best property manager in your area ongoing so you don't have any stress. And you just rinse and repeat that. So again, that's like a prime example of like a $4,000 coaching offer like everyone was selling in 2022, 2023, where it's like you get access to my course, my curriculum, and my coaching calls, versus like a $25,000 offer where it's completely done for them. And this isn't even including like back ends, recurring, all that kind of stuff. Like anyone who knows like how these high ticket real estate offers work, you're making a lot more than $25,000 every time you onboard a customer. They're probably making double or triple that with all the back ends and all that kind of stuff associated. So how do you create an offer like this? So first thing that you need to do, and this is just like a thought exercise, is you need to list out the starting point and the end goal for your ideal customer that you've identified. So let's say, again, it's this, high income earner or business owner who needs to lower their tax liability. Like, we need to list out every single step of the process, from coming in on day one, having zero expertise or zero knowledge about Airbnb, and getting to the point where they've successfully launched multiple short-term rentals. So you need to map out essentially every single step of that process and everything that you could do for them, everything that you could kind of tee them up for with different affiliate partnerships or like vendors within your program, and then everything that they need to do themselves. And you want to keep that third bucket like as minimal as possible. So you literally need to write out, like on a pen and paper, what is every single thing that they need to do? Everything from setting up the LLC to choosing what market that they want to have their STR in, to, like later on in the process, like optimizing things for Airbnb, getting property managers in place, all that kind of stuff. You need to list out every single step and essentially do as much of it as you can for them. Figure out the second bucket, which is what can I kind of do with them or like tee them up for. And then the third thing is, what do they have to do themselves? So again, hypothetical offer, let's say we're doing a fitness offer, but we want to change the person we're selling to. Instead of just selling to anyone, we want to sell to like high net worth executives, business people, all that kind of stuff. So this could be an example of the offer stack after I go and do that exercise I just told you, which is you take their initial blood work, you do a one-on-one consultation with the physician facilitated by us and our team. You get a full supplement and peptide stack prescribed to you based on your blood work. You get a full holistic nutrition plan because these people can afford good food, which is going to be kind of part of the branding of like your program is, this is going to be like not gym bro, protein bars and like nasty like protein shakes. Like this is going to be stuff that makes you feel good and makes your energy really good. And you're going to get all of that based on your blood work, and it's going to be updated weekly or monthly based on your preferences. You get a one-on-one coach ongoing, which is, and that includes weekly check-ins. You're going to get your training plans updated monthly. You're going to get quarterly blood work sent to their home, all that kind of stuff. So again, this is how you build it to be more hands-on versus like the standard one-on-one coaching that 10,000 plus fitness coaches sell to. So 2020 to like 2023 info was more about the information, and the implementation was kind of left on the client. Whereas like 2026 and beyond info is less about the information and way more about the implementation and actually getting them to the result. So a lot of the 2020 to 2023 info offers involved heavily selling someone on an opportunity. Like they'd be like, oh, this is the best business model, and in my program, I'm going to teach you how to do this. I'm going to show you the opportunity. I'm going to like give you the chance to make money with this thing. Whereas like moving forward now, because of like market sophistication, the fact that most of these business models are not as like new and shiny as they used to be, you kind of like subtly sell the opportunity and you heavily sell the mechanism, aka how you get them a result, and you deliver with implementation. I hope that makes sense, because it's like back in the day when like everything was a bit earlier, it was like you were kind of teasing them with the opportunity and they were buying the information because the information was the means of learning about the opportunity. Whereas like now, you kind of subtly lead with the opportunity, but you heavily sell the mechanism, aka how are we gonna like make sure that you get results? And then instead of just giving them information, you need to give them implementation because you're selling the mechanism. I hope that makes sense. So now your offer is like less of like, oh, I'm gonna pull back the curtain and show you this thing. It's more about like, your offer is a means for like eliminating guesswork and the cost of mistakes for your audience, not just teaching them how to start something. So like in the past, it was all about here's how you can start the thing. Now it's more about like here's how you can get the results, which again, inherently, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but inherently means that it needs to be more focused on implementation rather than information. So now you're selling the most direct path to an outcome, not education on how they could get an outcome. I hope that makes sense because this is like one of the most important parts of this entire phase is this, little block right here. So next thing I want to talk about is introducing an offer ladder. So again, we've been talking about these done for you, more hands-on kind of hybrid offers. And ideally, you want all of your funnels and all of your messaging all pointing to that offer. So like if there's some big components in the done for you that are like a really big selling point, and this is the reason why people would want to buy the thing, you want to kind of showcase all that stuff in your funnels, and you want the funnels intended to go to like your best offer, like your highest ticket one. But obviously, not everyone is going to be qualified for the done for you, whether it's because they don't have enough money or they don't have enough time or whatever your qualifications might be. So you want to have like an offer ladder. And again, this doesn't have to be something that you launch with on day one, but it's definitely something to incorporate down the line. So essentially what we do is that whole exercise that you did a few minutes ago where you list out every single thing that you need to do to get someone from point A to point Z, and you basically list off like everything that you're done for you could essentially have. You want to like strip down from the done for you, and you find a good middle ground for the high ticket, for the flag, or for the mid ticket, the flagship, which is like your standard high ticket, and then the done for you. So you take the done for you, basically figure out like, okay, if this done for you is 25 grand and my flagship or my like high ticket is going to be 7,500, what should be included in the 7,500 to where it's still enough value, but I'm not like cannibalizing my high ticket? And then same thing with the mid ticket, like what needs to be included in the mid ticket so that way it's still valuable enough to sell, but it's not cannibalizing the offer in front of it. So again, these offers should not be cannibalizing each other, and they should each have specific goals where it then makes sense to ascend to the next offer. So this is one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make with this whole offer ladder thing is they'll be like, okay, I have my $497 Amazon blueprint, I have my $3,000 Amazon blueprint, and I have my $7,500 Amazon blueprint. And all of them teach you how to have a successful Amazon business. And it's like, obviously, people are just going to go with the path of least resistance because there's no like difference in the outcomes that they're getting them. Whereas like, let's say for example, I have a crypto offer positioned to new investors who want allocation to crypto. So let's say my 1997 mid-ticket downsell is just understanding the fundamentals of investing in crypto. So again, all of my funnels still point to this done for you offer, but I'm gonna have people who come in, they don't have enough money, they don't want to get started with the 25 because it's just too much of a commitment for them. So I sell them into the mid ticket, which is understanding the fundamentals of investing in crypto. That's the whole result. I'm not over promising, I'm not trying to sell them the world and tell them I'm gonna make them a millionaire. It is a very like honest result. Here's what you get for $2,000. Then my 10K, which is like my flagship or done with you, is like a done with you crypto portfolio structuring. We're gonna show you how to deploy your first $100,000 into the markets with confidence. So in this $10,000 package, you get a one-on-one onboarding plan, you get a quarterly one-on-one with someone on our team, you get weekly group calls, you get access to deal flow, you get access to staking protocols, all that kind of stuff. Again, this is completely just like made up hypothetical. I'm just trying to illustrate the principle. And then like the 25K a year, which is like where everything is kind of pointed towards, like this is what we're talking about in the VSLs, this is what we're pitching on the webinars, all that kind of stuff. Grow your portfolio to 7 figures and have elite access. So like this is kind of like the creme de la creme offer, and this is what everything points towards. But if people come through for this offer, but they're just not, for whatever reason, whether it's money or whether it's intent, like they're just not down for this, this is still a good enough offer to where it's not like if we're being honest, if someone comes through the funnel for this, they probably don't want to buy this. So this is more so for like your setters to go and reactivate people with and stuff like that, because it's going to be sold on the front end as this, whereas like this is going to be kind of like your downsell mid-ticket. So point being, getting back to the 25K a year, grow your portfolio to 7 figures and have elite access. So you get one-on-one calls with like the founder, you get everything in the $10,000 package, plus you get in-person events, plus you get mastermind calls with like crypto experts, business leaders, all that kind of stuff. So again, like they all have very different outcomes and goals. And that's the important part here, is they do not cannibalize each other. Because if someone's like very like first time, they don't even know what Bitcoin is, like they're probably not going to want to buy this because it's like a bit of a jump, but we could easily get them into the 1997 because the whole goal is just understanding the fundamentals. And then we can ascend them later into, the flagship where the result is deploying their first $100,000 with confidence. And then after they're done with that and they've deployed their first 100,000, like, okay, cool. What's the next goal? It's growing my portfolio to 7 figures and having elite access. So what I'm trying to show here is like, you build this ladder where like, it's very easy for them to get the first result. And then after they get the first result, they want the second result. And then after they get the second result, they have the third result. But this only happens when you have 3 different results. When you just sell 3 different, learn how to grow your business on Amazon, like there's no ladder there. So again, as I'm talking about ascension, right as someone reaches or is nearing reaching the first goal is like prime time to ascend them. And you need to have systems built in place for that. Whether it's like a very common one is like, if I sell someone on this $2,000 offer, I'm going to have my closer and my setter set a call with that person for like 14 to 30 days out. Because after 14 to 30 days, they should have gotten this result in terms of understanding the fundamentals of investing in crypto. They're really confident in their, trajectory because we actually fulfilled on the promise that we gave them in here. And then we're like, cool, like you want to keep going, right? Like you want to get to the point where you have a few $100,000 in crypto. You want to be confident about your portfolio. You want to be able to, know that next bull run, like you're going to crush it. Well, we have this product specifically made for you. And then after I get them in that, maybe I set another check-in call with them 2-3 months down the line to do the same thing with this. And it's like, again, these offers don't cannibalize each other because the promises and the results are vastly different. Also, the deliverables are very different. There's a lot more value in this than there is in here. And there's a lot more value in here than there is in here. So again, it all just like logically makes sense. And that's how you want the offer ladder to work. But as I'm saying, like you need to have processes in place to get people from tier 1 to tier 2 and from tier 2 to tier 3. So again, that heavily revolves around salespeople, CSMs, all that kind of stuff. You can also bank on like internal webinars, email, retention, all that kind of stuff. So again, notice our mid-ticket and our flagships don't promise the world and don't cannibalize the done for you, which is like really what we want people getting into. So these are all like stepping stones to get to this. So again, this is how you like LTV max. You have to point the funnel at the done for you / flagship. Of course, like even if I have a funnel that's all about the done for you, like I said, I'm still going to get a lot of people in here just because this might be too much of a commitment, might be too much capital, whatever. But you're going to have some level of split between the two. You have the mid ticket and downsell for the financially unqualified people or the people who are way too early to buy these two. And then you set up processes, like I said, to ascend 2K to 10K, 10K to 25K, etc. So again, you point your funnel, like everything leads primarily towards the 25K. So you're very front end profitable on the 10K and the 25K. You're acquiring high purchasing power / high value customers because obviously the people who have 100K to deploy into the markets or 7 figures, like they can buy other stuff. We can do, special launches with affiliate people. We have, in-person masterminds that we can sell tickets to, all this kind of stuff. Like when you acquire customers like this who have hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in capital, like there's so many other things that you could sell them. And again, you might be thinking like, oh, well, yeah, like that sounds nice, acquiring customers that have millions of dollars to their name, like whatever. But there's always some level of this. Like even for B2C, I would much rather be working with corporate people, retirees, business owners who have $50,000, $100,000, because there's way more that I can do for that customer rather than someone who has $500 and needs Clarity Pay to get into any offer that I have. So again, going back here, you're going to be front end profitable with the 10K and the 25K. You're going to be acquiring high purchasing power, like high value customers, and you're building an offer ladder where customers can and will pay you multiple times, and you're building a business that will actually crush on paid. Because you sell to the right people, you charge high ticket and have high upfront cash, and you have high LTV on the back end and start to build an ecosystem that can be monetized in so many different ways. So again, like the fact that I acquire customers here who will go on and buy this thing, I acquire customers on the 10K that will go and buy this thing. I'm acquiring customers who actually have capital to invest, and I can sell them other offers. I can figure out other affiliate partnerships, vendors, all that kind of stuff. Like that is the whole point of this whole thing. So we started from the very beginning, like who do I even sell to? Why is my offer even important? And we got to the point where you can tactically see like what this really looks like for your offer or for your client's offer. And again, like I said, this isn't really doable in every single niche, but especially for my operators, these are the kind of people that you want to be working with. And for my info, offer owners, like you want to figure out how you can emulate this kind of structure as much as possible. Because like I said, you want to be selling to the right people. You want to be charging high ticket and having high upfront cash because it just makes the unit economics of your business so much better. And you want to build a business that will actually give you LTV later on, as opposed to just rinsing people for the last 3-4 grand and they'll never pay you again. So now that we have your offer ironed down, you have some idea of how all this works, it's time to decide which funnel you're going to run your traffic to. And I'll see you in phase number 2 for that. All right, guys, welcome to phase number 2, which is all about funnels. So let's get right into it. So I just want to say with this whole free course, there's a reason why all of this is in order. Because a lot of people get an offer and they just think to themselves like, oh, I'm going to run a webinar for this, or I'm going to run a call funnel for this, or whatever it might be. And essentially the reason why I say that is because a lot of people like neglect the offer, which is why I started with offers in phase 1. But most people think that the right funnel is going to kind of bail them out of a shitty offer, when in reality, if you do the offer correctly, basically any funnel is going to work. And we'll get into the nuance of that in just a second. But with that being said, like in general, I really believe that there is no best funnel. Like I know people who make $1 million a month with low ticket. I know people who make $1 million a month with webinars. I know people who make $1 million a month with challenges. I know that people make millions of dollars a month with call funnels. Like there is no best funnel. There's only the best funnel for you. And we're going to talk about like what that actually means. And when I say for you, I mean for your specific offer and your specific team and your specific creator. Basically being able to analyze your strengths and weaknesses and, you know, kind of like who the offer aligns best with and who your ICP really is. And that's how you choose the best funnel, but there is no objective best funnel. I run low ticket webinars, challenges, call funnels. I run them across all of our different agency clients. Like some clients run some funnels, some clients run others. But point being is I don't just believe that like you should go all in on one funnel and only run that one funnel for all your clients. I think it's idiotic, but either way, let's get into the pros and cons of each funnel. So that way you understand kind of what we're working with and kind of my perspective on all of this so you can actually make the right decision for your offer, for your client's offers. So first, starting with call funnels, the pros are it's very easy to launch, pretty self-explanatory, very quick feedback loop. So what I mean by this is with webinars and with low ticket, there is a very high probability that in the beginning, like you have something that's out of alignment, whether it's like the webinar topic isn't good or the low ticket offer, like the actual offer itself isn't good, or you know, your webinar deck isn't good or whatever it might be. And these feedback loops take a bit longer because like if you have stuff in a webinar that needs to change, you need to actually go and like run the webinar again. So let's say like, you know, I start running webinars on January 1st and I run my first webinar on January 7th and I have to make some changes. And then I make changes and I run the webinar again on January 14th. And then, you know, I have to make more changes and I run the webinar again on January 21st and I make more changes. And what I'm saying is like these feedback loops take a while because you actually have to go and run the webinar over and over again. With low ticket, you might have to reposition the whole offer. You might have to reposition the VSL and the sales page and redo the product and like redo the order bumps and all this different stuff. So I would say like those funnels do have their own strengths, but feedback loops like call funnels win because the reason why is I can launch an offer on a call funnel and I can start getting applications same day, closing calls next day, have my setters getting feedback immediately, have my closers getting feedback immediately, and I'm consistently booking calls on my calendar, which means I'm consistently getting feedback, which means that I can like quickly go and take the feedback I'm getting from my salespeople, work it into the front end, revamp the offer, whatever. And essentially I'm typically launching with call funnels just so I can get all of this feedback and really nail down the offer, the messaging, the ICP, all that different kind of stuff. And once I nail that down in my call funnel, it makes going and doing webinars and low ticket so much easier because I already have all of the intel that I need to get and I got it from my call funnel, which is the easiest to launch and the quickest feedback loop. And then again, last thing with call funnels is it's pretty easy to see proof of concept and scale quickly. Like I know that, you know, I'm in the process of launching a couple different offers right now. And I know that, you know, if I launch the call funnel, and obviously I have enough experience to know like when I did it well, like, or just knowing that I'm doing it well enough to where there is a chance it just works on try number 1. But like I know with call funnels, like if I start spending, my front end numbers look good, my prospects are picking up the phone and like the lead quality is solid, like I know that I can just start scaling and I can go from zero to like a few grand a day and spend within realistically like a week or two as long as I have the salespeople. And it's pretty easy to see proof of concept and just scale quickly. Don't get me wrong, you can scale all of these funnels quickly, but these are just the pros of call funnels. Whereas like the cons of call funnels is that they're pretty sales team dependent because there's not a lot of like front-loaded nurture on the marketing side. It's very much on the setters and the closers. So you need to have a good sales team to run call funnels. And like a mid offer is going to really show itself here because you're going to have mediocre front end stats, you're going to have mediocre show rates, and you're going to have very low intent on the closing calls. So those are kind of like the cons. Whereas like if you have a mid offer, but you have a really good low ticket ascension funnel, and you know you have a really good sales team. Again, you kind of need a good sales team and a good marketer for all this, if I'm being honest, to make it work on paid traffic. But if I have a mid offer on a call funnel, like it's just not going to go well. Whereas like with webinars, you know, maybe I can really juice it up and like really sell the opportunity sensationally and like get people to buy it. Whereas like with call funnels, like it's going to really reveal how good the offer is. Webinars, getting into the pros, much easier on your sales team just because a lot of the leads have a lot of the context that they need, and a lot of the sales process for webinars is just logistical and maybe handling some fear, not necessarily educating them on the opportunity or anything like that. And then again, like very easy to scale once you have proof of concept. There's really no difference in running a webinar with 200 people versus a webinar with 1,000 people, besides just like you need to have have more salespeople to take the calls. So once you have proof of concept, pretty easy to scale them. But the cons of webinars is it can be a lot of upfront work and investment if you're just getting your offer off the ground. Because like I'm saying, like there's been plenty of times where I run an offer through a call funnel and I realize like the offer just isn't that good. Like we need to reposition the offer. And it's a lot easier for me to just have my creator film a new VSL and, we redo the offer and, that might take a few days. Whereas it's like with the webinar, I build out the whole deck. I run a few webinars. I realize that the common thread across all the feedback I've gotten from the few webinars is that the offer just sucks. So now I have to go redo the whole deck, redo all the webinar stuff, like because everything needs to be congruent, and then run the webinar again. And then if I need to change the offer again, then you see what I'm saying? Like the call funnel is a very like flexible and direct funnel that is very good for getting feedback. And then once you get that feedback, you implement it into the other funnels when you launch them. So again, this point, you need a pretty skilled marketer to make these work on paid. If I'm being honest, like organic webinars are easy. Like anyone can run an organic webinar, but to actually like max out the funnel on paid, you do need a pretty skilled marketer to make it work. Like I said, slower feedback loops, so you have to keep running the webinar to see how your tests play out. The unit economics are like depending on how good you are at liquidating no-shows and running the funnel efficiently. So what I mean by that is like on a webinar funnel, let's say you're paying $15 for registrants, which is like pretty normal for like a decent ICP. Like if you're not just selling complete like mass market biz op, like 10, 15 bucks. And right off the bat, like even if your show rate's good, you already lose 70% of those leads just because 30% of people are going to show up to your webinar. So if you don't have the right processes in place to liquidate your no-shows, you already lose 70% there. And then of the 30% of people who do stay for the webinar, 25%, or let's say like 80% of that 30%, which is like 25% of total leads, like actually stay till the end of the webinar. And then of that, percentage of people, only, 20-ish, maybe 30% of people book a call. And then of the people who book a call, only 70, 60% actually make it to the call. And what I'm saying is there's like a lot of drop off in the funnel. And don't get me wrong, like you just have to run the numbers and be kind of cognizant of the way that the funnel economics work for webinars, because otherwise you'll kind of just go into and be like, wait, like I lost like 97% of my leads somewhere in this process. So the unit economics are kind of like unless you have the processes that we have in place for liquidating no-shows and really just getting the most out of your leads all in all. But those are kind of like the cons of webinars. I think webinars are amazing all in all, but you just have to understand these funnels like face value before you just like have this random bias towards running webinars or running low ticket because someone online told you to do it. With low ticket, again, a lot easier on your sales team once you have a good sales process outlined, because a lot of it kind of involves like not baiting and switching, but just like it's pretty clear that what they bought for $27 or whatever it was like isn't enough to actually get them the result. It's more of just educating them about whatever it is. But it is in general easier on your sales team just because you're going to have higher show rates and higher intent on low ticket calls versus like call funnel calls. Again, very easy to scale, and it provides daily calls unlike webinars. So that's another con with webinars. It's like unless you want and you have a creator who's willing to do multiple webinars a week, like you're only really having a full calendar 3-4 days a week, and then the other 3-4 days are kind of empty. Whereas like with low ticket, you're going to consistently have calls being booked on your calendar. One of the big pros of low ticket is amazing unit economics when done properly. Like if you're running a low ticket properly, you might be winning back 50, 60, 70% of your spend right on the front end. Or none of these other funnels provide that. And then the cons are that you legit like will just not be able to make this work if you don't have a good marketer, and the positioning of the offer is so make or break. If you have the right offer, you're going to see it right away. If you have the wrong offer, you're just going to be spending into oblivion. You're not going to know like what to do essentially. These are kind of like the overviews of all the different funnels. So typically, I'm going to get into this in excruciating detail later on in this course, but I like to scale into multiple funnels. And if it's an unproven offer and brand new for paid, I'll typically, like I said, start with a call funnel, get all the feedback I need about the offer, the best front end positioning, who my ICP is my sales team good, like all this kind of stuff. And then once I get the messaging down, things are scaling, I'll launch internal webinars up to clean up anything that gets through the cracks. Like some of my offers right now, we book 40 or 50 calls a day on paid. I know that no matter how good my setters are, no matter how good my closers are, like there's stuff getting lost in the cracks, whether it's follow-ups, it's no-shows, cancel call, whatever. So internal webinars are an easy way to clean up all those leads without having any more ad spend and having to do cold webinars. And then from there, I'll either go low ticket or webinar and do whichever is left after. So like, I'll walk you through an example later on this course of exactly how I'm doing this in real time and why I made the decisions I made. I don't want to go too in depth here because it might get confusing, but you build like a nice flywheel where your call funnel kind of attracts the solution aware buyers. Your webinars are a great funnel for problem aware and colder buyers. And then your low ticket purchasers are coming in as well. They're attending the webinars, all that kind of stuff. And you have like this nice like spider web of funnels that essentially are bringing more and more people into your ecosystem and you get like this rising tide lifts all ships effect across the board. So again, I'm going to go into this more in phase 4, but I'm just kind of doing a little overview while I'm on the topic of funnels. So like you have your low ticket buyers show up to your webinars, they go through your call funnel maybe and buy. Your call funnel applicants, they show up to your webinars, maybe they buy your low ticket for some reason. Your webinar registrants, like, they show up to the webinar, maybe they do or don't book a call, but then they come through the call funnel later, or maybe they buy your low ticket later. You get the idea. Like you're bringing more and more people into your ecosystem because you have different doors that lead into your ecosystem. Whereas like I see some people where like the only funnel they've ever run is a call booking webinar. And it's like you realize that the only people that you've ever even offered to get inside of your program are the people who have stayed past 2 hours of your webinar. Like you have a huge pocket of people in your audience who just won't show up to a webinar, especially if you sell to like more upstream, higher net worth people. Like you have a huge pocket of people in your audience who just won't show up to a webinar, nonetheless stay till the hour mark to actually book a call. Same thing with like low ticket. You have a huge pocket of people who are like, I don't want this $27 thing, it's a scam, I just want to know what he has. But he only has a low ticket funnel, so I don't know, what's the high ticket. And then you obviously have a pocket of people who don't want to get on the phone with your sales team because they think that they're going to get hypnotized and swindled into giving them your credit card, so they don't want to do that. So like what I'm trying to say is you have all these different entry paths into your offer ecosystem, and typically when done properly, it kind of like rises everything across the board because you have like the spillover. But again, this is like all what phase 4 is about, so stick around for that. So when it comes to your first funnel, like the first funnel you want to launch on paid traffic, again, you can have the same thought process for organic. It's just this entire course is through the lens of paid traffic, and we'll talk about why in a bit. First off, you need to check the pros and cons above, and this should make your decision process pretty easy. So you need to lean into the strengths and weaknesses of your team. So if you have like a cracked marketer, maybe you do low ticket. I don't really see low ticket working very well on organic very often, or I just don't see a lot of people leading with it on organic. But let's again talk through the lens of paid. If you have a really good marketer, maybe you do low ticket, maybe you do webinar. If you have like an marketer and you have a really good sales team somehow, maybe you run a call funnel. But like I said, you kind of need a good marketer to make all of this work, if I'm being honest. It's more so the strengths and weaknesses of your sales team. So if you have a really good sales team, you can probably just spin up a call funnel and be fine. If you have a kind of like shitty sales team, maybe you need to lean into webinars or low ticket and kind of like front load that context, which we're going to talk about in a second. And if you're still not clear about what funnel you should be running after that whole pros and cons thing, you need to think about the awareness level of who you're planning to market. So you guys should know the 5 level of awareness. You have your most aware, you have your product aware, your solution aware, your problem aware, and you're completely unaware. So usually for info, people aren't very like product aware or most aware. Typically they fall into like problem or solution aware. So I'll give you examples in a second. So each funnel has a certain degree of nurture within it inherently. And again, I'm going to talk about this in just a second. Call funnels are the best for solution aware people who already know about the business model, already know that they need to lose weight, already know that they should be investing in X vehicle because it's more direct and there's less nurture. Low ticket and webinars are kind of like how you get people through that entire customer. So the way I like to describe it is like a football field. Low ticket and webinars are good for walking someone from end zone to end zone. They might not know anything about it when they show up to the webinar or buy the low ticket product, but through consuming the webinar or through consuming the low ticket, they're going to get to like the 50-yard line, then your sales team gets them to the other 50-yard line. Whereas like if you send completely problem aware people through a call funnel, your sales team is going to have to do a lot of education. You're going to have longer sales cycles, all that kind of stuff, because there's not as much nurture being done within the funnel. Like there's not as much stuff for them to consume. So your sales team has to kind of pick up that slack. And I just essentially modeled that out here. So like for webinars, like you do a ton of nurture within the funnel. Like they show up to the webinar, they watch the whole thing. Your salespeople don't really need to do a lot of education. It's more so just like logistics, objections, all that kind of stuff. Low ticket, similar thing. If they actually consume the low ticket, essentially like a low ticket is basically just like buying the context from a webinar, but they get a lot of that context within the funnel, and then your salespeople don't need to do as much education. Whereas like with call funnels, and this is only if your back-end selling systems are done properly, shout out to Jeremy, but if your back-end selling systems are done properly, it's probably like 60-40, or honestly, I would even argue it's the other way around. I just drew it this way for some reason, where it's like there's not a lot of nurture being done in the funnel, and a lot of the education is going to fall into your salespeople. So yeah, actually, I think if you do the back-end selling systems properly, it is like 60% in the funnel and 40% on the salespeople, whereas like these are like 70-30, 80-20, but either way. So I'll give you some examples so you can actually wrap your head around. So if you're selling a fitness offer, like we showed an example of in the first phase, to high net worth people, they don't need to be educated that they need to lose weight. Like, they already know that. So they're already solution aware. They know that they need to lose weight, and that's the solution. So you're fine running those people to a VSL. If you're selling a done-for-you Airbnb offer to people who are already looking into Airbnb investing or real estate investing, which is the key part there. It can't be to just people who have never heard of Airbnb, which like at this point, everyone's heard of Airbnb, but either way, they probably don't need to be educated about the model as much, more so just about your offer. So running them to a VSL is also fine. But if you're running a crypto offer to people who have never invested in crypto before, there's going to be a lot of consumption that needs to be done to get to them to the point where they're ready to buy. So low ticket and webinars are better. Also, this reminds me of one thing. The end of this graph is essentially where they feel comfortable enough to make a buying decision. So maybe like they stay through a whole webinar and they're like 60, 70, 80% of the way there. Low ticket, same thing. They consume it and they're like, cool, I understand this. And then, the salespeople need to give them the education, get them over the line. So that's like just a bit more context there. But going back to this, the same can be said with a lot of mass market biz op offers. If you need to do a lot of education on the model and you're going for more problem aware people, low ticket and webinars are going to be easier. Or if you're selling mass market biz op, just market to more solution aware and run them to a VSL. And this is usually easier low hanging fruit. So I'm gonna give you examples of what this all means. So if the front end, let's say you're running a TikTok shop offer, is if you're looking for a way to make money online, on the side, whatever, do TikTok shop. That's a more problem aware audience because their problem is that they need to make more money and you're positioning your model as the solution. And you run them to a VSL, you're going to get a bunch of questions about the business model, how it all works. What if my account gets banned? How often do I have to post? All that kind of stuff. And you're going to be getting more like, let's say, objections. Again, this is all hypothetical about people not wanting to show their face. I don't know if this is for me, all that kind of stuff, because you're going for a more problem aware audience because you went problem aware to VSL funnel. But instead, if you want to run them to a VSL funnel, you should be going for a more solution aware audience, which is if you've already been posting TikTok shop videos and you can't consistently go viral, or if you're already a UGC creator and you've been looking at TikTok shop, again, these people are already solution aware. They already know about TikTok shop. So you don't have to sell them on the model. You just have to sell them on your offer. So when you go for a more solution aware audience, you'll be fine running them to a VSL. But if you want to go for like the true mass market, like biz op, you should run them to a webinar or to low ticket. You're not going to have to sell them on the model. The funnel, in that case, whether you choose low ticket or webinar, is going to sell them on the model, and then your salespeople have to sell them on the offer. I hope that all makes sense. If you want to go for that more problem aware audience, is what I just said, you're better off running them to a low ticket where the friction on the front end, aka the paywall, is the qualifier, or a webinar where you can just round up 1,000 of them, educate them all at once, and then give them the nurture that they need to buy. Another thing to mention when you're talking about which funnel you want to choose is the ICP that you're targeting. Do they have time, and what is their preferred buying behavior? So for high net worth and biz owners, it doesn't make as much sense to try and force them to show up to something live. It's like trying to fit a round peg in a square hole. Whereas like you're better off running those people to a more direct like call funnel so they can just get the info they need and decide. Whereas on the other side of the spectrum, if you're going for a niche like stay-at-home moms who probably have plenty of time and probably need a lot of reassurance before they buy something high ticket, low ticket or webinar makes way more sense. Low ticket allows them to sample like your company or your creator and learn the model before they ever get on the phone. And the webinar is going to give them all the nurture and education they need about the offer. So essentially all this reassurance before buying. So in short, choose the funnel based on your sales team's strengths and weaknesses. Make sure that the awareness level you're marketing to aligns with the funnel that you're running them to, and those two things need to be down pat. Once you've chosen the funnel that you're running them to, so once you've went through this whole, decision-making process, again, if you just go off of pros and cons, it should be pretty easy. I just had to do the awareness level stuff to kind of get that second layer. But you need a financial model to funnel out and start building the initial assets. So if you want SOPs on any of this stuff, just DM me on Instagram. It's sanjay.ramc if you want SOPs for that stuff. This isn't like some ManyChat automation. This is actually just offering you the stuff. But either way, initial assets for a call funnel, I'm just giving you like the laundry list. Most of you guys probably already know this. For call funnels, you're going to need the landing page, you're going to need the VSL, the confirmation page, the SMS and email flows, the sales assets, the FAQ videos, email flows, etc. For webinars, you're going to need the landing page, the confirmation page, the email and SMS flows, the sales assets, the slide deck, the post-webinar pages, replay pages, like flows, all that kind of stuff. For low ticket, you're going to need the sales page, the upsell and OTO pages, the sales assets, confirmation page, the flows, internal webinar decks, all that kind of stuff. The reason why I'm even saying this is because it's very important that you kind of construct all of this stuff after you've, this free course is meant for you to go in order. So what I'm saying is don't go and do all of this stuff and then be like, oh yeah, I actually want to market to solution aware people, because all of your stuff might have been written from a problem aware perspective. So you need to get clear on this stuff as you go. And then once you've decided on the awareness level and the funnel, that's when you actually go and write the stuff, because you need to make sure it's actually aligned and congruent. So you need to be sure of the awareness level, the offer, again, that's another big thing too. You don't want to write a webinar and then change the offer. ICP analysis, which we're actually going to talk about in the next phase, and even messaging that has worked or is working right now first before you start writing any of this stuff, because you need to craft it all congruently. You can't just willy-nilly take a problem aware VSL, have solution aware ads, all that kind of stuff. It's just going to be a mess. Everything everything needs to be congruent and feel like one smooth path tailored for one person or a few people. Really like one awareness level is more of what I mean. So when you launch a funnel, your initial focus is obviously just checking all the boxes and making sure that everything is within KPI to get you profitable. So your landing page and VSL is converting well enough to meet KPIs on the front end. There's no unnecessary friction to book, and your slot utilization is good. So this is through the example of a call funnel. Your pre-call process is dialed in and your show rate is good. So again, you're kind of just like doing all the baseline checks. Like, is everything set up properly to where I have the chance to be profitable? Of the calls who show, are they well framed? Which means your sales assets and pre-call process is good. Even on the sales calls, making sure that your pitch, your closers use is congruent with the way that you convey the product on the front end. That's a new thing that I've learned that's super important, is like, you honestly kind of need a copywriter making your sales deck pitches, not a salesperson. For anyone who doesn't close on the first call, how are we re-engaging them to get them over the line? All that kind of stuff. So essentially, like, when you launch the funnel, you're just making sure that everything is stable and like all of your T's are crossed and all your I's are dotted. And that's kind of like what all this stuff boils down to, is like, before you even think about scaling, you need to make sure you're doing the basics properly. So you need to like really walk yourself through the entire customer journey. And again, I don't want to repeat all of this, but like everything from the landing page to the VSL to the even like the calendar slot utilization, the pre-call process, the setting process, the closing process, even the follow-up process. When you first launch a funnel, and again, we've already walked through how to choose it, so now I'm at the point where you're launching a funnel, you need to make sure you're doing all the basics properly before you even think about scaling ads. Again, this is where financial modeling comes in heavily, because you need to be able to find constraints quickly and understand what metrics work for your business. So what I mean by it is, like, if you, like we were talking about in phase number 1, if you have an offer that has a $10,000 AOV, like, you can get a little bit sloppier, you can withstand like a bit lower show rate and a bit higher cost per call and all that kind of stuff. Again, that's kind of like the luxury you buy by having a higher ticket offer. So you need to actually know your numbers before you launch the funnel, so that way when you launch the funnel, you know if your numbers are good or bad. Because some people will probably be like, oh, you know, I've heard that my cost per call should be $200 and I'm paying $600, so my funnel's not good. And it's like, dude, if you have a $20,000 offer, which again, this is like real scenario. Like, I have an offer right now where our AOV is probably $20,000, and it's like, dude, I don't care if my cost per call is $600, $800. I care about the quality. So again, like, you need to know the numbers for your specific offer, your specific funnel that you're running, so that way you understand what's actually good and what's actually bad. Because some people will hear like, oh, you know, I should have a 35% show rate on my webinar, so I'm not going to scale until I get a 35%. But it's like, if the unit economics, again, this is usually the case when you have a higher ticket offer. If you have a $25,000 offer and you're at a 7x ROAS, who cares about the show rate? Like, honestly, like, do whatever you can to get it higher, but like, you should still be scaling if you're that profitable. So again, financially modeling gives you all the clarity you need. So once you're profitable, things are flowing, and you're looking to really max out a funnel before you start spending heavy into it. And I know you guys are probably thinking like, okay, what happens if this goes wrong? And like, what happens if I launch my funnel and it flops on paid? That's like essentially what all of like phase number 4 is about. So just stick around for that. But once you're profitable, things are flowing, and you're looking to really like max out a funnel before you start spending heavy into it. That's kind of like the whole point I'm getting at, is like, before you start upping the spend, you need to have confidence in the infrastructure. You need to have confidence that the VSL is good, landing page is good, the front end is good, your pre-call process is good, your setting process is good, your closing process is good, because you want to like have the green light across the board to really hit the gas on the spend, rather than like just gassing the spend and everything comes crashing down like a house of cards. So again, that's my point there. But one of the biggest things I've seen separate average funnels from insanely profitable funnels are all the things like outside of these laundry lists. So it's essentially like all the like intangibles. It's like, how can you build more intent and get more buy-in from prospects within the funnel before they even show up to a call? How can you give them insane levels of proof and conviction in your process before they even speak to anyone? How can you convey real urgency, real scarcity, and a narrative to act now versus later within your funnel? Like, these are all things that the marketer can do to essentially make the salesperson's lives easier by like having things within this funnel. And again, I'm being kind of like secretive, because there's like certain things I don't necessarily want to share on YouTube. So if you want that kind of stuff, like, that's where, you know, one-on-one consulting or having me actually work on your offer, if you're an offer owner, that's where you can apply for that kind of stuff. I have a link down below this video where you can apply for that. If you want me to have like real eyes on your offer and actually be able to tell you like where this kind of like secret stuff will work and where it won't work, because again, like, there's a lot of nuance involved in this. I handle all my offers completely differently. Crypto offer versus a fitness offer is going to be handled completely differently. So that's why I can't give you like general stuff like that. in a YouTube video. But either way, if you're interested in working with me, whether you're an operator or an offer owner, just feel free to click the link down below. Either way, getting back to this, these are the things that separate like the elite cold traffic offers from good ones that are just getting by. So again, you need to like really think about everything in the customer journey. On the ad side, the landing page, the pre-call process, the sales process, the back-end sales process, essentially like follow-up and internal kind of stuff. You need to think about every single step in the funnel and think about where you could be doing things a little bit better to just like build more intent and like make your deals easier. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to get someone to make a purchasing decision. So again, I gave you some examples here, like how can you build more intent, how you can get insane levels of proof and conviction, how can you convey real urgency, scarcity, and narrative to act now versus later. All that stuff is like top of mind. There's obviously way more, but like you can't just like check all these boxes and be like, okay, I'm good to go, time to scale. Like you need to kind of put like that extra 5-10% into it because it goes a long way. And to give you some more tactical stuff, because I know like this might sound a bit like open-ended, at every step in the funnel, whether it's call funnels, webinars, low ticket, etc., there's so many opportunities to build intent, pre-sell people, make the sales process move quicker, make customers have more conviction, overall just like mitigating waste within your funnel. This last point is really more about like the pre-call process and the back-end sales process, just like making sure that not a lot of leads slip through the cracks and like everything's being done properly, because especially with paid, like your unit economics are really big. So if you have, for some reason, you're canceling 35% of your calls and you're never getting any money out of those people, like that doesn't help. Or, you know, your closers are really bad at follow-up and you never run any internal webinars, like that doesn't help. So yeah, again, this kind of stuff is kind of hard to generalize into one video because it's so dependent on the niche, offer, etc. So if you're looking for help with your offer, just DM me on Instagram or book a call down below for an audit. This is what the page looks like. And then again, just like a quick tip, study the best people who run the same funnel as you, ideally in other niches, because you don't want to just study your direct competitors. You want to look at people in other niches who run the same funnel as you and like, what are they doing before their webinars? What are they doing in their pre-call process? And try and emulate those things where you can. I'm not telling you to be like a dickhead, like funnel hacker and like go and like actually show up to people's sales calls and stuff to see what they're doing. But like we've all opted into someone's webinar to see what they're doing. But either way, these marginal lifts that you can get throughout the funnel when done properly will manifest in better front-end numbers, higher show rates, less cancellations, higher close rates, more cash per close, etc. So especially on paid traffic, these marginal lifts, if you can figure out how to do this properly across the whole customer journey, and you stack up 5% extra here, 10% extra here, 5% extra here, 10% extra here, like whatever it might be, like those things go a long way, especially compounded, because if you can figure out how to get 5, 10, 10, 5, 10% across the funnel here in terms of extra show rate, extra close rate, extra whatever, and you get that when you're spending 30K a month, and those same things hold when you're spending 200K a month, like that's where it really gets fun. So I'm trying to just say, like, make sure you do the fundamentals right, but then go above and beyond when you start scaling. So that's all for phase 2. I'll see you guys in phase 3, which is all about like the fundamentals of paid ads and all that good stuff. All right, guys, welcome to phase 3. So in phase 3, we're going to be covering kind of the fundamentals of paid ads. Phase 4 is going to be the actual scaling of paid ads, getting to 10K a day in spend and ultimately close to $1 million a month in revenue. But let's start off here with the fundamentals of paid ads. So every info product should be built to scale on paid traffic if you actually want to get to $1 million a month. Why? Obviously, if you've watched my channel before, you know the reasons why. But at the end of the day, you can't necessarily control organic. If you somehow manage to pop $1 million a month organic, that's amazing. But there's not a ton of input you can do to actually know that 3 months from now, 6 months from now, you're going to be pulling in the same amount of views, the same amount of leads, the same amount of calls. Whereas like when you start getting into paid ads, it literally just becomes a math equation. It's like, cool, I'm always going to be able to pack on my sales team's calendar, $200, $300 a call. My show rate's going to be between this and this. My close rate is going to be between this and this. Now I just need to figure out how to actually do the inputs, get the creative, get the closers, all that kind of stuff. And it becomes a lot more of like a mathematical, controllable business rather than like you being a content creator who just so happens to have an offer. So again, not to give you too much of a spiel as to why paid ads, because odds are if you're watching this video, you already believe in paid ads. You see all the other guys in your niche crushing with paid, and you know that's the path to do it eventually. So like I said, organic is much harder to predict. An organic foundation and a paid for scale is the ideal combo. So don't get me wrong, like I think having a personal brand is amazing. And I think having a personal brand actually makes cracking paid ads way easier for you because you have a lot more credibility and authority. Because you have to remember that if someone's clicking on your page from a paid ad, like they've never seen you before, they probably have no clue about what you do. And when they see someone who has 50,000 followers, has a ton of good content, has, highlights that show off client success, they're posting stories consistently, all that stuff, like it looks way better than someone who has like 2,000 followers and has no content. So that's one part. Another thing too is high ticket offers, especially as you go into like higher ticket, like 15, 20K plus, they have longer sales cycles. And if you go look at any of your attribution tools like Hyros or whatever you use, and you see the average like time that someone has been in your your ecosystem or in your pipeline, or you might even know this from your sales teams, you know that the average person does not transact in the first like 5 to 7 days of finding you. They transact sometimes weeks or months later. So my whole point is, when you do organic well, you have people who come into your ecosystem today and they buy 4 months later, but the only reason why you stay top of mind, why they ended up paying you 4 months later, is because you kept nurturing them on organic, on email, with webinars, like whatever it might be. But organic is definitely a really big piece of the puzzle. All I'm saying is that the best info businesses, in my opinion, are the ones who make a few $100,000 a month organic and then do that next chunk of revenue completely off of paid. So, 2, 3, even like $100K a month from organic, and then paid is kind of your controllable scale. Organic keeps your bills paid, all that kind of stuff. So if you have a bad month on paid, you're fine. But organic is the real scale. And again, like I said, it's never organic or paid. They work off of each other. And the reason why I say that is because you'll have people who are in your organic following and they're constantly seeing your paid ads, which speeds up the sales cycle of them buying. So they're essentially like organic first, and then sometimes they come through and buy from ads. And then you have the same thing the other way around. I would say the other way around is obviously even more prevalent, where you have a bunch of people who come in through your paid ads, they're intrigued, but they might not be ready to buy. Then they start following you on organic, they start seeing your content more, and then weeks, months go by, and they eventually end up buying. And again, that was a paid first lead, but organic second. So again, they work off of each other, they complement each other, and they make each other stronger. So before you ever do a thing when it comes to paid ads, let's keep this very clear. You need to create an in-depth ICP analysis once you've dialed in the offer, awareness level you're marketing to, and all that kind of stuff. If you want, you can just DM me on Instagram, and I'll give you an example of this. Again, this isn't like a ManyChat reel where I'm going to have a DM setter try to set you. It's me just genuinely offering you something. We do these in-depth ICP analysis, and it goes into super like insane depth about what are this person's like actual motivations, what actually scares them, what are their short-term goals, long-term goals, buying triggers, like things that turn them away, all this kind of stuff. And you essentially want to create that. Like that's one of the first things I do when I onboard a new client or whenever I'm consulting a new client. And you want to plug that into whatever LLM you're using for copies, whether it's Claude or Manus or whatever. And that's essentially like the foundation. So that way you're not just writing like generic copy. Everything that the LLM ever comes out with is going to be essentially built on that foundation. Another thing that I would do before you ever start writing or running paid ads is just doing a simple competitor analysis and looking for a few things. So the reason why I'm very big on competitor analysis is, and honestly, like this is super like normal thing for e-com. I just feel like not a lot of people do it for info. Reason being is because like I always look at it this way: you only want to model after people who you know are actually crushing, like people who are doing 500K a month and beyond, and people who just have very well run offers. But the reason why I want to do competitor analysis is that I know that my competitors have tested through steps A, B, C, D, E, F, C, like whatever, is because I know that my competitor has tested through all of the iterations. They've gone from step A to step B to step C to step D, all the way to step Z. And eventually, again, this is with the caveat that I'm only studying people who I know are actually doing well. You don't want to study people who are just like trying to figure it out. When you do a competitor analysis on the people who you know are crushing, you learn what they're doing at step Z, and you can save yourself some of those iterations that they already tested through to arrive at where they're at. So if I know someone's smashing, like I'm going to look at what kind of creatives they're running, what kind of funnels they're running, the messaging, the VSLs, all that kind of stuff, just to get an idea of something that I know is working. And again, on the ad side, you want to be looking at the messaging and the formats. So like what awareness level is this person targeting? What like specific hooks are working best for them? Like what demo are they targeting in terms of age, like conditions, like ICP in general? And then also what formats are they running? Like are they doing a lot of testimonial ads, selfie ads, podcast ads, static ads, like whatever they might be doing? The formats I would say aren't as important. It's more so like the messaging and all that kind of stuff. But either way, you can get ideas on both sides. You also want to take a look at like what funnels they're running, how they're positioning the offer, all that kind of stuff. And then really like what you want to do is you don't want to just rip what other people are doing, because if you're looking at someone who's doing $1 million a month and spending $300K a month, who's had, years of data and they have a really good sales team and whatever, and you just try to copy what they're doing, like they're probably just going to outbid you and literally just like outcompete you, because again, like the one thing that you can't copy is conviction. Like you might be copying someone who is running, let's say, an auto webinar funnel. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to show up to this guy's auto webinar. I'm just going to copy the whole thing, and I'm going to launch my own, and I'm going to copy his ads. I'm going to run the same thing. And it's like maybe that person that you're copying is scaling their auto webinar at a 0.7 ROAS because they know how much they make on the back end. Whereas like you're going to go and copy their same thing. You're going to see like a 0.4, 0.5, 0.6 ROAS, and you're going to go, oh my God, this doesn't work. And you're just going to quit. Whereas like the person who you're copying from knows the numbers like the back of their hand. and they are scaling at a 0.7 because they know how much they're going to make. Again, completely like made up example, but I'm just using that to illustrate the principle that like you can't copy their conviction. You can get ideas about how to position your offer, what kind of ads to run, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, like trying to just straight up rip people who have more budget, more conviction, more data than you is not smart. And again, you want to be thinking about like your unique mechanism, your unique selling points that you're going to use to outcompete them. You're looking for like what they could be doing better, a funnel that you think might make more sense, an angle that might make more sense, an ICP that they're not targeting, all that kind of stuff. And again, this mainly comes down to positioning. So you just want to see like how competitors are positioning their offers, take notes, look for like little white spaces and all that kind of stuff. When it comes to launching the paid ad side, we've already dialed in the offer in phase 1. You've already decided on the funnel in phase 2, and you've already either created the funnel in phase 2 or you're about to, which is another good reminder to talk about congruency again. So if I'm going for like a higher ticket offer to a more affluent demo, let's say like that fitness example from like phase 1 or phase 2, really what I want to do is like when I'm speaking to a higher net worth, like more affluent person, I just want to be more direct. So just going more direct in the ads, more direct in the VSL and all that kind of stuff, because these people are usually like no fluff, kind of like get straight to the point. I want it or I don't, kind of like that's like the way they buy. And usually when you have like a true like no-brainer offer on paid, like if you have really put the work into the offer in phase 1, you feel super confident and you're like, this is a better offer than all my competitors. I have a good guarantee, like all this kind of stuff. Typically on paid, these no-brainer offers do very well when you essentially just like present the offer on paid. Like Cole Gordon, this is actually something like I've learned from him, but a lot of his offers, like the ads are essentially just telling you what they do. It's not like this whole like thing where they're like painting this huge narrative and then they like weave that into this bridge about why so many people do this wrong or whatever, and then they finally get to the offer. It's like literally, here's what we do. If you want it, this is how it works. Cool, book a call. And I think that's a good place to start. Obviously, you're going to kind of fatigue that messaging a bit and reach kind of like a ceiling on it at a certain point, but it's definitely a good way to start. Just if you know for a fact you've done the offer well and you just want to like keep it clean cut, all that kind of stuff. You don't need any fancy hooks, no like crazy complex creative formats, any of that. And if the offer is actually good, this should get you easy traction and it will give you validation that your offer is actually good. Example number 2, if I'm going for a more like mass market kind of biz op, let's say like a low ticket funnel, the ads that I'm running, because I'm running them to a low ticket funnel where the paywall is essentially the friction, like I can afford to go more broad on the messaging. Because if I go super broad on the messaging and I'm running them to like any kind of free funnel, like a webinar or a call funnel, I'm going to get a very big skew of people who are buying the thing. Whereas like with low ticket, that paywall kind of acts as the friction there. And obviously it's better if you go for like a more solution aware kind of audience, and you're more precise about who you're actually targeting because you know who's going to buy your back end offer. But you can afford to go a little bit more broad with low ticket just because you're running them to a paywall. So the people who have intent are going to buy, the people who don't have intent are not going to buy, and you're getting more intent through the funnel just because there's actually like a transaction there. You're going to go like if you're doing specifically mass market biz op, you're probably going to go more problem aware. The VSL is going to be more long, like direct response style, more dramatic kind of thing because you're actually making a sale on that page and meeting them where they're at in terms of being problem aware with the messaging, walking them through a more thorough like customer journey, kind of like doing the opposite of what I said in example 1. Like you want to do the more dramatic, like painting the narrative, this is what everyone else does, here's like the counterintuitive way to do it, all that stuff. Example number 3, if I'm going for a more mass market biz op on a webinar funnel, I would say the ads are still a little bit more broad and problem aware, but you need to put a little bit more attention to it because again, with any kind of lead funnel, whether it's a webinar or a VSL, like what you say on the front end is very literally going to attract what you get on the back end. So like, for example, if I'm doing, let's say a biz op where let's say it's like a business in a box kind of opportunity, and the person who is coming through the funnel ideally is someone who like has $20,000 plus in capital, they have 10 to 15 hours a week, they're looking for something more active, they already have a good source of income, but they want like the next thing, like whatever it might be. Like we need to be more precise about that in the messaging for the webinar because it's going to quite literally reflect who we get through. Whereas like on the low ticket, like yes, you still want to do that, but also low ticket is a conversion based funnel where you're kind of going for cheaper clicks and then you're running them to the VSL that's going to kind of qualify them and then they're going to transact. So either way, let's say I'm going for more mass market biz op on a webinar funnel. I already covered the messaging part. You can still afford to go more problem aware with webinars. Obviously, if you think you have a good enough pocket of solution aware, you can do that too. But with webinar ads specifically, you really want to leave a lot of open loops about how good the webinar is, what we're revealing, and really like selling the novelty of like this new thing that's going to be presented to them on the webinar and kind of like this appeal of like the unknown. Like, you want to like put the webinar itself on a pedestal and like, if someone just told you like, hey, I'm throwing this event on this day. Here's all the speakers. You should come because of this. Like, buy your ticket. That's not nearly as enticing as if you're like, if you're an info marketer, this is the can't miss event of the decade. We have, we're breaking down exactly how these founders all got to 7-8 figures. Like, you really need to like sell the event and, like kind of lean into that appeal of like what might happen on the event. So again, it's just important to map all this out beforehand so you actually have clarity about the ICP you're targeting, the awareness level you're speaking to, all that kind of stuff. And then from there, we're going to get into scripting direct response ads for the first time. So let's just do a quick example here. Webinar for Amazon FBA, problem aware. Also, let me know, guys. I was going to make this part of this course a bit longer, but I didn't want to go like too off topic. I kind of like the courses to be more like covering ground. If you guys want to see specific videos on like how I write direct response ads with AI, just comment that down below, because I feel like this is a thing that a lot of people are really like coming up short on. It's like a lot of these ads that I see with AI just sound like total slop. And don't get me wrong, it's taken me some refining to get it to the point where I think it's really good. But just comment down below if you want to see like a more in-depth breakdown of like exactly how to do this. But for the ICP testing, let's break down like kind of the way that I do direct response ads, at least in the beginning. So in the beginning, I'm going to identify like 3 big angles to test. And I like calling these messaging buckets. And these could be specific personas that you're targeting to, or more of conditions or characteristics of people that you're targeting. So let's say I'm running with the ICP testing where I'm actually targeting 3 different personas. Again, these are just completely random examples. I'm not saying to actually do this. I just like came up with these a few minutes ago. So messaging bucket number 1 could be like corporate people looking for a second stream of income that they can control. So it's like the hooks are all going to be pointing towards that person. If you're in corporate, blah, 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 having a 6-figure salary sometimes isn't enough, like whatever. Messaging bucket number 2 could be stay-at-home moms looking for a stress-free business that they can run from home. Messaging bucket number 3 might be retirees looking for an easy, not super technical business they can use to grow their savings. So again, this is like an example of, okay, cool, if I had an Amazon FBA webinar and I wanted to go after 3 specific types of people, these might be 3 people I pick. Again, when you're identifying the 3 people that you want to pick, or like however many people you want to pick, the best thing to do is to look at historically, like if it's an organic offer, like there's a few things to mention. 1, who does the creator align with best? Because if it's like, let's say like a woman who's in corporate and left her job to do Amazon FBA, like that's the easiest person to go after, is just people who are in her position. Or if it's like a guy who's like in his 20s, like maybe you go for corporate professional, maybe you don't go for stay-at-home moms, maybe you do like retirees and like one other, or whatever it might be. But point being is, first thing is like, who does the creator actually align with? And then second one, who has the offer like historically closed really well? Because the good thing with paid traffic is like, if you know, for example, that your offer closes corporate people or they close retirees or whatever, left, right, and center on organic, you can literally just manipulate the messaging to get more of those people that your sales team is already comfortable talking to, closing, they have confidence in, all that kind of stuff. So that's like the good part about paid traffic is once you know who your closers are good at selling to and you know who actually buys your offer, it's very easy to keep that same kind of person coming through the funnel. And then on the other side of things, if I don't want to go after specific personas, but instead I want to go after conditions or like characteristics that people have and kind of like get whatever comes with these conditions, if that makes sense, like I'll show you. So if you feel capped out in your current gig and you want to control stream of disposable income, like blah, 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 blah. And like, obviously with this hook, you probably will get a lot of corporate people, but you also might get people who run like small businesses or whatever it might be. And what I would say is this is like more of like a sniper approach. Like I know exactly who I want coming through the funnel. And this is more of like a shotgun approach in the sense of like, I'm still going to qualify these people and speak to like my ideal client, but I'm not going to call them out by name, if that makes sense. So again, messaging bucket number 1, messaging bucket number 2 could be like, if you've been looking into popular online business models, but never found one that seemed to make sense on paper for a normal person who doesn't have a social media following, who doesn't want to post content, et cetera, et cetera. I don't necessarily think that this is a good messaging bucket. Like I said, I literally just came up with this stuff. Messaging bucket number 3, if you're looking for a reliable source of disposable income that you can manage from home alongside your other responsibilities. So again, like this bucket might get you, retirees, it might even get you stay-at-home moms, it might get you corporate people, it might get you whatever. But, you have to be very precise about the messaging across the board here of just like actually speaking to disqualifying the wrong people and qualifying the correct people. So like you need to have capital to invest in this because Amazon is a game where you need to buy inventory. You need to have time. You need to, be willing to learn a new skill, like whatever it might be. And, if you have these angles, that's fine, but the messaging is very precise these days. So you can't just like, if you just said this verbatim in a hook, you're probably going to get a lot of broke people. So you need to like really qualify people with the actual messaging in the ad. either of these work, whether it's testing for ICPs or testing for conditions. It's just more so if you have specific people that you want to target, opt for more ICP testing. If you're fine selling to like a more broad market and you don't want to limit yourself to a few avatars, go for conditions. And then after you get enough data through the conditions, you'll start to learn like, oh, okay, I tend to close like this kind of person more often. And then you can kind of pivot to ICP. But again, either work. Within these buckets, we usually do 5 to 7 executions, which are different ads within each. So let's say I do messaging bucket number 3, which is like reliable source of disposable income. I'm going to have 7, sometimes 10 ads within that bucket. And again, this is like the big point here. What I care about more is what specific bucket or angle is working and less about the specific execution. So I think there's like this might be a little bit controversial or just like against what a lot of people will teach. But if I have a winning ad, a lot of people will like take that winning ad and be like, oh my God, like in this ad, I basically said like this magic spell. And that's like the only way I'm ever gonna find another winning ad again is if I just keep copying this magic spell that I said in this ad. And I just think that's a flawed way of thinking. It's like the reason why that ad worked is because it struck a chord with the right kind of person. And, you know, like that hook was almost more of like a trigger for that person. And what I would say is like every ad kind of has like a ceiling in the sense of like, you take one message and only like, let's say I put one ad in front of all 300 million people in America. Maybe 5 million of them are going to resonate with it, but like not all 300 are going to resonate with it. So it's like every single ad and every single hook has like a point where it kind of gets tapped out. And what people do is they'll test like, you know, all these different ads and they'll just be like, okay, these hooks work. Let me just keep milking these hooks. And I just think that's kind of like a flawed way to think about it. What I more so am looking at is like what angles and what personas are like working best and like, do I want to get more through the funnel? And then how can I continue speaking to that person in a different way? So if I know that like, for example, let's say that this messaging bucket is the one that worked and I got like a bunch of people who are in corporate, they're just like, oh my God, like I feel so capped out. Or, you know, small business people who are like, oh my God, like I know I've been doing the wrong things forever. And like, I just realized I need to do this thing or whatever. Like I wouldn't like, yes, I would take that hook that work and try to like milk more out of it. But also this like bucket is more valuable to me in the sense of like, okay, I'm speaking to someone who feels capped out. How else can I speak to that person? Oh, maybe I do like a testimonial ad of like one of my students who felt capped out and then say that he felt capped out after. Or maybe I just talk about, you know, like if you're someone who's really ambitious and you're making good money, blah, blah, blah. It's like you're taking the angle and just figuring out more ways to like speak to that same person or just like have some kind of unique hook there rather than just taking the hook at face value and being like, oh my God, I have to say this hook or, you know, nothing else is going to work. So again, just like I like to think more about angles. And whatever executions work, cool. But what I care about more is what angle is consistently producing for me. Because if I go try, let's say I do this messaging bucket 5 times and like 3 out of 5 times I find like a good winning ad at it, I'm like, cool, this angle has legs. Whereas like, let's say I do this messaging bucket 5 times and I find a winner once, this angle doesn't have as much legs. It's just like that one execution of the angle kind of found a sweet spot. So I hope that makes sense. For tactically like actually writing these ads, you should use your ICP analysis and then specific mana skills for direct response ads. Again, I have those and I'll give them to you completely for free. It's not like a ManyChat flow. Just DM me on Instagram and I'll send it over to you. It's just like a mana skill of how to write direct response ads. So that's writing the ads. Obviously, I could go a bit more in depth there and let me know if you want videos about stuff like that. But when it comes to launching your first ads campaign, again, I don't want this to be like a super technical video where I'm like walking through the Facebook Ads Manager for the first time. I do have more videos on my channel that are like more in depth, like on specifically on ads and more technical stuff like that. But when it comes to launching your first ads campaign, typically under like $1,000 a day, the media buying is insanely simple. So usually I just run one CBO, like one campaign, and I just work out of that one campaign. And even then, like I kind of want to consolidate down into as few ad sets as possible, because if I'm running like a call funnel, one important thing to know about Meta is to get out of learning and to get into active, you need to have like a few dozen results hitting the pixel a week. So let's say like I'm spending $1,000 a day, that's $7K a week. If I'm paying $200 a book call, that means I'm getting 35 calls a week. That's enough to get one ad set, maybe 2 ad sets out of learning. But if I do one CBO and then I have 10 different ad sets and like each of those 10 ad sets is getting like 2 calls, 3 calls, 2 calls, 3 calls, they're basically all going to stay in learning. So again, just the general principle without getting super technical is like in the beginning, you want to consolidate and kind of like do as much as you can with less in terms of like, dude, when you're spending less than $1,000 a day, you don't need like a ton of ads. Maybe like 20, 30 is more than enough. like one CBO, couple ad sets, and just try and get results back to the pixel, and really just focus on like everything outside of the ad side. Like focus on the sales process, focus on the lead quality, focus on the messaging, like all that kind of stuff. Like the media buying under $1,000 a day is like very, very low time commitment. So again, just like work within that one campaign until you have new funnels or new standard events to scale into, and just keep trying to spend within like 1 to 2 campaigns. Again, like I said, you need to get 30 to 50 results back per week to get out of learning. So for call funnels and low ticket, you basically need to do, like I said, one CBO, one ad set, or a couple ad sets. If you're running like a webinar and you're spending $1,000 a day, that means you're getting 100 leads a day or whatever it might be. At that point, none of your ad sets should be stuck in learning. But yeah, again, I don't want to overcomplicate this. Literally under $1,000 a day, one CBO, a couple ad sets, like it doesn't need to be overcomplicated. When you launch your first campaign, like I said, look for leading indicators. So that's things like cost per call, click-through rate. Also leading indicators are just like call quality, because like I said, if I launch a call funnel, like I have an offer I'm launching this week, I'm going to launch it. I usually launch it like $700 a day. That's just kind of like my number. I don't know, I could do 1,000, I could do 500, whatever. But I launch at $700 a day. I'm expecting to get 3 to 5 calls a day off of that pretty consistently. Like some days it might be 3, some days it might be 6, some days it might be 4, like whatever. But somewhere in that ballpark of 3 to 5 calls a day. As long as my leads are like, and I have lead find, I can see that they're actually financially qualified. They're like picking up the phone. They just seem like decent leads, and the front end stats look good. I'm basically scaling right away because I just want to get more data through, and I want to get more at bats for my sales team. Because the longer that you like stay small, you're essentially just delaying the process of you getting feedback. So some people will stay at like $300 a day for like a month because they really want to see a close come through. But it's like if leading indicators are good, just ramp that up and get more people on the calendar quicker. If the leading indicators are really bad, they're probably not just going to magically change. So you need to go find the constraint within the funnel and fix it. Again, so like I said, leading indicators, identify and note down best performing creatives in the initial batch. Again, until you have a ton of spend, like it doesn't even really matter which creatives are performing the best when you're spending like $500 a day, but you can just keep your eye on it. Start to ideate new like adjacent messaging for your next batch of ads. So what I mean by it is, like, let's say I launch at $1,000 a day and leading indicators look good, lead quality is good, all that kind of stuff. I'm like, cool. I found a good pocket in terms of messaging, like this is working. Let me start to think of like new messaging for my next batch of ads that's similar to what I'm doing right now, but still like unique enough to where I'm not just saying the same thing over and over. So again, like I said here in this example, like if this was the initial like batch of 10 ads I launched with and it's working, I'm like, cool, let me just figure out another bucket that's similar to that, kind of speaks to the same person, and that'll be my next batch of ads that I script. So again, pretty simple here. If the leading indicators are good, like I said, start scaling the initial campaign, start ideating next batches of creatives, and proactively start hiring salespeople if needed to take on extra volume. So if you have like one closer who's like self-setting and that's like all you have, and you're like, cool, I'm probably gonna be scaling the spend, let me go find a setter and let me maybe go find another closer just to get ahead of the ball. Okay, but now on the flip side of things, if the leading indicators are bad, let's talk about what to do. So you need to find the constraint and attack it. Again, that's like more of on a quantitative side. So like if the cost per call is too high, you need to figure out like, okay, is the constraint on the ad side or is it on the page? Or maybe even the application? Or, if the cost per call is good, but no one's picking up the phone, you need to figure out like, okay, what can I do in the pre-call process to make them more likely to pick up the phone? Or maybe I'm even targeting the wrong pocket of people. Or if, the cost per call is good, the people are picking up the phone, but no one's showing up to the calls. Again, you need to adjust like the pre-call process, figure out how to get the show rate up. Or if all of that's going well, but your closers just aren't closing, that's the constraint. You need to attack that. Especially in the beginning, you want to look at sales feedback and figure out if anything top of funnel is messing things up. So again, this is more like on the qualitative side in the sense of like, you might have good looking front end metrics and people might be picking up the phone, but they might all be like completely the wrong person. So it's like at that point you would have to adjust the messaging, the VSL, all that kind of stuff. And then you're basically just doing this on repeat until everything's within KPI on a quantitative side and framing is good in terms of qualitative. So like everything meets your KPIs that you did in your financial model in phase 2, but then also like you're bringing in the right people through the funnel, which is more of like a qualitative thing that your salespeople are going to have to confirm for you. So let's get into the checkpoints of scaling. And again, guys, like these aren't like set in stone. This is more of like a range, I think, of like when you're around this much in spend, like this is how things are working. When you're around this much, this is how things are working, all that kind of stuff. So when you're at $1,000 a day in spend, which is $30K a month, you're kind of just like trying to get proof of concept. Like you're buying enough data to the point where you're actually like booking calls, you're actually getting sales if you're running low ticket, you're actually getting webinar registrants if you're running a webinar. And like you're kind of moving, but you're in like the 3-foot end of the pool. And then when you get up to like $3K a day in spend, which is like $100K a month, that's kind of where you're like actually making some moves, like you've got things rolling. Like you shouldn't try to get to 3K a day like immediately. You kind of want to see proof of concept at this checkpoint and then kind of advance to the next checkpoint. And that's kind of where, you know, like you're starting to hire more on the sales team. Maybe you got like a couple setters, a couple closers. Like at this point you should be profitable, if not like very profitable. And you're kind of like finding your footing and like everything's kind of starting to pan out. At like 5K a day, I would say is when you actually have to start using like scaling principles. Like a lot of the more like complicated or just like advanced Facebook ad and like scaling stuff, like it doesn't even really matter until you're at like 5K a day in spend. So again, this is when you start like, you know, really like looking towards like, okay, do I need a second funnel? Have I completely maxed out my first funnel? Like, is there anything that I could be doing better? Anything that's inefficient in this process? All that kind of stuff. And really, you should be addressing that even further. But this is like kind of the last point where like you definitely need to have that down pat. And then like 10K a day in spend is like I like to compare this to skiing. Like 1K a day is like you're on the bunny hill. 3K a day is like you're on the slow mountains. I forget what they're called, like green. And then this is like a more beginner or like intermediate kind of mountain. And this is like you're on the black diamond or whatever. But yeah, like at 5K a day, like you definitely know what you're doing. And at 10K a day, you have to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you're like gonna die. I'll show you guys typically what an ad account looks like from like 0 to 5K a day in spend. And I like to call this like the waterfall structure because you'll kind of see how everything kind of like waterfalls its way down. So first thing we do, let's say your budget is 5K a day, which is 150K a month. I usually like putting around 5 to 10% of my budget into top of funnel content. And this might be like Jeremy Haynes' Venus Flytrap strategy, or this might just be just generally running content top of funnel to my engagers and stuff like that, kind of just like pre-framing them with stuff. I've always found that using content before the direct response ads does help a bit and kind of like alongside of it. So definitely a big believer in that. When it comes to running top of funnel content, do not just run like aura edits or like, I feel like when people hear top of funnel content, they're like, oh yeah, let me just run whatever's gonna get the most views. Like no, if I was running let's say a wholesaling offer, I would be putting spend behind top of funnel content pieces that are like, here are the 5 things that most wholesalers mess up when going from, you know, 5K a month to 30K a month. Here's like, you know, exactly how I would go from a wholesaler making 5K a month to 50K a month or whatever it is. It's like, you want to like actually be attracting the right person and like you essentially, it's the same thing as like speaking to someone in the hook of an ad. Like I would only want to put spend behind content that is actually going to like speak to my ideal client. So again, like maybe I don't like run spend behind a video that's like, I made $1 million wholesaling when I was 25 years old, because that's just going to attract anyone. Whereas like if I say something like, here are the 8 things that all wholesalers mess up that keep them from ever signing, you know, 100K assignment fees or like whatever it might be, where it's like more in market towards my actual ICP, that's what I'm putting spend behind here. And then the direct response ads, again, like I said, from 0 to 5K a day, you want to consolidate into as few campaigns as possible and be sure that campaigns are getting out learning. Like I said, again, I have other videos on my page that are way more in depth about scaling ads. I'll leave links to those down below. I just don't like repeating myself in all these videos because at this point, I've said the same thing over and over if I just keep saying it. So I would rather just go and watch a more technical ads video after this. But the waterfall goes from top of funnel content to direct response ads. Then they obviously land on my page. I want to maintain congruency with the highest spending ads, and that'll usually just have the best effect in terms of like opt-in rates and all that kind of stuff. And then my bottom of funnel content, I think my bottom of funnel content is even more important than my top of funnel. That usually gets around 5 to 10% of my budget. So like I said, if I'm spending 150K a month, this might be like a few grand a month, like 5 to 10K a month. Meet them out where they're at in the sales process. So again, this is all just like Jeremy Haynes, like hammer them content, short form hammer them, long form hammer them. We do social proof hammer them, all kinds of stuff. So we'll run all the testimonials. It's just like static ads, all the stuff that they would want to see at this point in the sales process. When they've already landed on our page, we're assuming that they've already like watched our VSL, they know what we do. So it's more of like just proving that we're legit, answering objections, pre-handling stuff, all that kind of stuff. Scaling in the beginning is basically finding proof of concept on the front end and making sure the prospects are all actually decent. So that's like the 1K a day, like, you know, bunny hill. Then you're scaling spend usually through more creative, because typically at like the 1K a day point, you don't have a ton of creative running. Third step is making sure your sales team can actually handle the leads and they're actually closing people. Step number 4 is continuing to scale horizontally. So what I mean by scaling horizontally is like, if you have one winning campaign, like yes, you can just hit the gas on the spend for that. But I typically like to have my spend across a few different campaigns, because I've just found that like not trying to overextend certain campaigns works better. And then also it kind of just like forces you to get into a better habit of like creating more winning ads and basically like not banking so much on one ad. Cause like I've had, ad accounts before where like literally one singular ad is like carrying the whole account. And that's not really a good space to be in because, it can all come, back down to earth very quickly. And then you're like kind of reactively trying to find more winners and all that kind of stuff. So I usually like to scale horizontally across campaigns, which is, again, just more creative, scaling up the number of reps, making sure they don't fucking suck and you don't break anything on the front end. This is kind of like where sometimes things sit in limbo for a bit, is like when the sales team is getting trained up, maybe you have people coming and going, like you're firing some reps, some churn, whatever. And at the same time, you're just trying to like hold everything down the front end and make sure your costs stay normal. That's definitely like one of the harder steps, I would say, of all these. And then you kind of max out that one funnel, scale into another funnel, and then just rinse and repeat. And then, of course, this is like if everything, goes swimmingly, but obviously that's not how everything always works. So, of course, the actual challenges are like lead quality, managing your sales team, new objections coming up in the process, pickup rate issues, show rate issues, keeping front end costs down as you scale, et cetera, et cetera. So again, like this is kind of like how things would go in a perfect world. And then this is kind of like what, will make this process take a bit longer. Phase 4 is actually all about like finding constraints and like how to get through all of these issues. So again, stick around for that. But this is like kind of what keeps you from just turbo scaling. But the process of scaling is pretty simple on paper, but obviously it's a lot easier said than done. Okay, so a lot of what I said in this scaling plan is revolving around more creative. So let's talk about scaling with new creative. So typically, my goal is to get to around 100 active ads across like direct response, top of funnel, bottom of funnel, as soon as humanly possible. I think you want to have 100 ads in your account like as quickly as you can, because that's really where stuff starts to like work a lot better, especially with Andromeda. So typically, I'm getting to around 100 active ads at like 2 or 3K a day in spend. And you start to notice that the more like actual diversity that you have, and I'm gonna get to this in a second, the easier it is to maintain your target CPAs. Basically, like I said before, none of your creatives are getting overextended, and you can scale horizontally across multiple ad sets on lower spend versus putting all your spend behind a couple of ad sets. Like I just said, like you don't want to have your whole account riding on one ad. So when it comes to actual creative diversity, because a lot of people will say like, oh yeah, I have a lot of creative diversity, but it's literally just them sitting in the same studio for 100 ads with just different scripts or different hooks. And it's like, that's not like actual creative diversity. Actual creative diversity is like new messaging buckets. So again, like new scripts, like completely unique, like not all of your ads should sound like exactly the same, but just change a few words. New formats, which I think is like probably the most important part. Like you want social proof ads, talking heads, ads of them walking, ads of them, like B-roll, static ads. Like you want your ad library to just look like a variety pack of chocolate. Like you don't want it to all just look like the same chocolate with like, slightly different shapes or whatever. And then when it comes to actual creative diversity, you can take existing winning ads and recreating them in new formats. So like I said before, if you have a hook that just crushes and this is like far and away the best ad you've ever put out, just has the highest ROAS, like go create it as a podcast ad. Go and say the exact same script while you're driving. Go and turn it into like a long form static ad. There's a lot of guys who talk about this, especially in the e-com space. Like this is very like standard in e-com. As you guys can tell, I've been studying a lot of like the e-com marketers because I just think that they're way further ahead than most info marketers. But either way, like just taking what's already working and creating it in a new format, so that way you're not just banking on literally like one video file. Like sure, maybe you're kind of rinsing one angle for a lot, but at least it's like spread up across different formats. So like I said, you want your ad library to actually look and sound different across the board, not just doing all talking head, all messaging being in the same pocket, et cetera, et cetera. And typically, we're shooting for like 40 new direct response ads per month minimum, and then new top of funnel and bottom of funnel is needed. And your ad account will always be at its best, or not always, but I've just found that your ad account will be at its best when you have like 200 plus quality creatives running at the same time. So just wanted to show you inside of like one of my clients' ad accounts. This is a screenshot I took the other day. So you can see like, I actually didn't do the best job at consolidating into a few campaigns. We have like, I don't know, like 5 direct response campaigns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so either way, I could be doing a better job at that, but it's just because some of these have been running for a long time and I just didn't want to reset them back into learning. So that's why they are spread out a bit. But if we look here, we have 189 ads. So like I said, right around 200. You can see kind of like the way that we structure the account. So we have like the hammer them ads. These are the bottom of funnel. So this is like the bottom of the waterfall. Then we have the top of funnel video viewers campaign. So that's like the top of the waterfall. More hammer them, more hammer them, more hammer them, more hammer them. So that's all bottom of funnel. This is direct response based on the region they're in. This is our graveyard campaign. Essentially what the graveyard campaign is anytime I turn an ad set off, like I kill a batch of ads or an ad set, I go and dupe it into a graveyard campaign and put it on cost per result goal, as you can see. So that way that ad still gets some chances to produce. I'm just not actively putting a ton of spend behind it. And that's definitely a good producer. You can see it booked 83 calls at $129. And these numbers are all qualified schedules. So our actual cost per call, like our cost per raw call, is like 60% of this, or like 70% of it, give or take. So like over here, we're actually booking like $100 calls. It's just $200 for a qualified call, obviously, because only the qualified calls go back to the pixel. This one, even less, maybe $60, $70 for a call, 130 for a qualified, 205 qualified, 299, 157. And these were all launched like pretty recently, as of a couple of days ago when I took this screenshot. So as you can see here, like this is kind of like our main like workhorse campaign. We spent 45K on it in a month. This entire account spends like, I don't know, what is this, like 80K a month right now, which isn't anything crazy. Again, it's like 3K a day. So we're still not in the like real scaling phase on this account yet specifically. But this is kind of like the way I like for my accounts to look, is like none of my, like, I don't have all my eggs in one basket. It's not like this is my only campaign that's performing and my entire account rides on this one thing. Like this campaign is producing. I could probably put some more spend behind this. Same thing here, same thing here, same thing here, same thing here. And like I said, these are bottom of funnel. So they're more like retargeting, going to warm audience. These are statics. This again is based on their region, geographic, in-feed VSLs. So what I mean by in-feed VSLs is they're essentially like 4 or 5 minute long ads that are like mini VSLs, but they're just structured the same way a normal ad would be. So like the normal like vertical like ad layout, it's just like a longer script. So again, this gives you some idea of kind of like the creative diversity within an account. And then we use a lot of cost per result goals and bid caps. What I'll say on those, again, without getting like super technical, is in the beginning, you might have to spend on highest volume just to kind of get like traction and get reps through, because like sometimes your cost per result, especially in the beginning, it's like sometimes your cost per result goals or your bid caps won't spend because you still haven't like optimized the funnel or even found like messaging that's working super well. So sometimes you kind of have to just go on highest volume to just like buy that data. But as you start to scale, and like for this account, we book like 30 to 40 calls a day. So it's like, we don't necessarily care if like let's say our budget right now is, I don't know, like napkin math, 17, 23, 29, 35. Okay, so our budget right now is like 4 or 5K a day actually. And I don't necessarily care if one day it only spends 2,700 and we only book however many calls, 20 calls or whatever it might be, because our calendars are already full on an ongoing basis. And it's like, I would rather be more efficient with my spend and put it all in cost per result goal or bid cap rather than just like spend the full 5K every day. And some days we'll get a $300 cost per call, some days we'll get $150. I would rather just be more efficient with the spend, not spend my full budget every single day. But then when I do spend, I'm getting good cost per call. So yeah, so here's some quick notes when it comes to scaling the paid ad side of things. Again, all of this comes back to the offer. You can't out media buy a bad offer. You can't find a magic funnel or a creative to sell a bad offer. If you nail the offer, everything on the ad side becomes infinitely easier. Little things like editing of the ads, the pacing, like how quick the ad moves visually, and like the way that the creator talks. Overall visual quality of the ads matter a ton, in my opinion. Like you can have the best script in the world, but if it's edited really poorly and the ad is just very boring and moves slow and the music sucked and all that, like it's definitely gonna hurt the performance. Like I said, real diversity is huge. Having statics, talking heads, podcast ads, social proof ads, B-roll, demonstrative ads, like, hey, like I'm literally here at a house that I wholesale, like whatever it might be. Not just 50 different talking head ads with different hooks, like I said. Constantly keep an eye out on top offers, ad accounts to get inspiration for new formats. Again, I'm not telling you just to rip people's stuff, but like, why limit yourself to only your creativity when like you can just study what other good marketers are doing and kind of get inspiration from them? Using content in the ad account helps the direct response a ton. Like I said, understanding actual direct response will help you crush the messaging side of things. And this is like, I've been writing copy since like 2020, 2021. I would say that this is definitely the advantage of having like grown up a manual copywriter, because I think like all the people who have came up in the past like year or so who have like only written copy with AI, like I just don't think that you can really understand the direct response side of things unless you've actually written a lot of stuff by hand before. So I think if you can understand actual direct response, like go read the books, go actually write some stuff by hand, like you'll realize that so much of what everyone does in info today is like legit slop. Like there's obviously some offers that are really, really good at the direct response, but like the vast majority of people doing info ads, like it's just terrible direct response. So yeah, I'm not even saying that I'm the best in the world at it. I'm just saying like, I think I can tell good from bad pretty well. And the last thing, everything closer to the top of the funnel will always be the biggest lever for who's coming through the funnel. So again, like the hooks of your ads, the actual like script of your ad, what you're saying, the VSL, all of that stuff, like I said, like you quite literally speak in the ads who you get through the funnel. So you need to be very meticulous about the messaging, especially the hooks in the ads, and then adjusting the VSL to be congruent with all that stuff and all that. So again, ads, and as you can tell here, like it's very hard for me to generalize the paid ad side of things, because otherwise I would have a video that's like 19 hours long, and I could show a bunch of consulting calls I've done or client calls or whatever, where you find these little things from offer to offer, and there's just like a lot of nuance depending on the offer that you're running and like all that different kind of stuff. So ads are probably the most nuanced part of this entire process. So if you want a one-on-one audit of your ad strategy, if you're an offer owner, or you want help learning the ad side of things, if you're an operator and just you want help scaling your clients with paid, that's just like the biggest thing I see from operators that want to learn from me, is they just want to learn how to do paid very well. And it's by far the highest leverage skill that I have ever learned in my whole journey doing this. And I wish I learned it earlier, and I wish I really took it serious earlier. But if you want help with anything like that, just feel free to click the link down below this video, book a call with me, or you can just DM me on Instagram if you want help. And yeah, looking forward to seeing that come through. But yeah, I'll see you guys in phase 4, which is all about scaling, finding constraints, and all that good stuff. All right, guys, welcome to phase 4, which is scaling. And yes, in case you guys are wondering, I did film this all in one day. That's just how I get when I do these free courses. I need to do it all in one day. Otherwise, I just get mad that I put it off. So either way, phase 3 was more of like the fundamentals of scaling traffic. Whereas like phase 4 is going to be like the nitty gritty of like, what does it actually take to scale an offer from 6 figures a month to 7 figures a month? So first off, just like one quick mental model that's always helped me is reverse engineering the goal based on my input, or like how much I need to spend to reach it. So let's say, for example, your client's offer right now does $200K a month organic, and you want to do $1 million a month. So let's just pencil in $200K a month as like your baseline for organic. And you need to figure out how to make the other $800K in revenue. In order to make $800K in revenue, you probably need to spend $200 to $250. That's where you'd be pulling in like a healthy ROAS, like a 3 to a 4. So let's call it, even on the conservative end, you need to spend $250 to make that $800. $250K a month is about $8K a day. So if I'm spending $8K a day, that's probably one funnel spending $4 to $5K a day steady, and then maybe a second funnel spending about the same, or maybe I get to $5K a day with that one funnel and I just decide this is good enough, like I'm just going to scale it. So either way, for me, that just helps breaking it down in the sense of like, cool, instead of taking this big goal that seems so far away from going from doing $200K a month to $1 million a month, all I need to do is get a funnel spending like $4 to $5K a day profitably. Like obviously that's just assuming that you pull a 3x, but again, like everything we've went over in this course, like you should know exactly if it's realistic to be pulling a 3x on the funnel that you're running, and exactly what that takes, because you financially modeled it in phase 2, right? You did that, right? Okay, cool. So either way, get the one funnel up and project out, like actually back out the numbers, like what does a 3x ROAS look like on a funnel that's spending $4 or $5K a day, and then just do that again on either the same funnel and double the spend, which again, obviously this all sounds way easier than it is to actually do it, or just get the one funnel up to 5K a day, a 3 or 4x ROAS, and then get a second funnel. My standard route, and this is completely general, and this is just to kind of show the thought process. I'm actually going to walk you through a live example of exactly what I'm doing with one of my offers right now that actually shows you this in practice, but I'm just going to kind of go over it on paper first. So like I said in phase number 2, I think it was, is first I'm going to launch the call funnel to just kind of get some feedback and get some reps. Depending on the offer and depending on like what I think has more legs, or like what's a better fit based on the criteria that I gave you in phase number 2, I might just stay with the call funnel, or I might do a cold webinar, whichever is better for the specific offer, which again, like I said, is going to really boil down to the sales team strengths and weaknesses, and then also the awareness level that I want to go after. So call funnel and cold webinar to scale to 4 or 5K a day in spend. If I choose the call funnel, I'm probably going to do an internal webinar as the second funnel, just because as you start to scale up a call funnel, you get a lot of kind of like stuff falling through the cracks, like a lot of no-shows, reschedules, cancellations, all that kind of stuff. So I like doing the internal webinar to clean those people up without spending anything else. And if I choose cold webinar, I'll probably do the call funnel as my second funnel, because if I'm doing a cold webinar, I want a more direct funnel. So I might do call funnel, or I might do low ticket. Again, it's just all just like in theory. So like I said, if I have a call funnel and an internal webinar, I'm probably going to go low ticket as my true second funnel. This part might be getting confusing, I'm sorry. I should have done like a diagram for this, but either way, the reason why I say this is because if I have a call funnel, and like I said, I'm spending $5K on my call funnel, I'm doing the internal webinars to clean up the call funnel leads, I also would want to do an internal webinar for my low ticket buyers, because that's a good way to ascend the low ticket buyers. So if I go call funnel and then internal webinar, I'm going to do low ticket as my true second funnel, because I would already need to be doing those internal webinars anyway. I hope that makes sense. So it's like I do the call funnel, I do the internal webinar to clean up the call funnel leads, but then also that internal webinar can be for my low ticket buyers too. So then it makes sense to just scale the low ticket and then have the low ticket and the call funnel like cleanup leads on the same internal webinar. If I have a cold webinar and a call funnel, that's more than enough to get me to $250K a month in spend, and I probably don't even need to do low ticket to get to $1 million a month. Obviously, like I said, this is all way easier said than done. I'm just trying to give you clarity as to like where you're going. But then the game just turns, like I said, into getting the first funnel profitable, scaling to like 5K a day, backing out the math in terms of like what does it actually look like to pull a 3 or 4x ROAS on this funnel, and then determining if we need a second cold funnel or not. So let's talk about why scaling into multiple funnels. And I know that we talked about this a little bit in phase 2, but I want to go into more depth here and really like explain to you why I say to do this. So typically, like I said, you see a rising tide lifts all ships effect, in the sense of like you're running your low ticket, you're running your webinar, you're running your call funnel, whatever 2 funnels or 3 funnels you might pick, and it's like you get low ticket buyers showing up to the webinar, they buy there. And then you get people who sign up for the webinar and they don't actually buy from the webinar, but they buy from the call funnel. Or you get people who sign up from the webinar and they don't buy on the webinar, but they buy the low ticket, and then they buy there. And it's like essentially you have all these different front doors into your ecosystem. We kind of already talked about this. Different buyers have different preferences for buying. So again, I think we also kind of talked about this, but essentially, like there's some people who just don't want to go through a call funnel. They're going to get hard sold. They think that someone's going to get on the phone and hold them at gunpoint and like make them buy or whatever. Then there's also plenty of people who just don't want to set aside the time to watch a live webinar. It's just not their thing. And then there's also people who are like, I don't want to buy the $27 product. I just want to talk to someone on the phone and figure out if there are actual offers for me. So again, when you run multiple funnels, you appeal to more people within your audience who have different buying preferences. Like I said, want multiple front doors into your ecosystem. You diversify your risk across funnels. So the same thing is like having different traffic channels. Like if you get some of your sales from organic Instagram, some from YouTube, some from paid, some from referral, that's a way better business to have than just being paid ads or just being YouTube. And like, if your ad account gets banned for a week or your YouTube channel gets banned or whatever, then all of a sudden you're screwed. Like you want to have a stool that stands on multiple legs. Usually one funnel will have a ceiling and diminishing returns past X point. We're going to talk about this in a second. Different funnels, like I said, are better for different awareness levels. So like call funnels are really good for solution aware funnels or for solution aware people. Low ticket and webinars are great for problem aware. And then, you can also mix in solution aware in there too. So that's another reason. And then the 7th reason, having multiple funnels sets you up better for being able to scale past $1 million a month. You don't want to be like a one trick pony and have all of your eggs in one basket. And if for some reason, your show rate gets nuked on your call funnel because you get like a bad Reddit review and you're spending $15,000 a day, like all of that kind of gets like pissed away. Whereas like at least if you were running low ticket, maybe you recoup some of that spend, or, people don't look it up before they attend your webinar, whatever it might be. So again, going back to like the whole spider web thing, it's like you build this ecosystem of like people are coming in from different directions. They're kind of getting stuck in your ecosystem. They're watching your content. They're opening your emails. They're, just more aware of you. And then they end up transacting with you later. But that only happens because you had different entrances that appeal to different people's preferences. Okay, so like we've been saying, literally everything has a ceiling. Angles, funnels, certain ad campaigns, etc. So what my process usually looks like is choose one funnel, dial in the messaging for that funnel. Like we talked about, call funnels are usually good for this to kind of get that feedback. You max out the funnel from end to end, everything from the landing page and the ad side to the closer sales process. Like you want to like do everything within that funnel to essentially like cross all your T's, dot all your I's, and get your infrastructure to the point where you're super confident in it and you can scale the spend and have 100% confidence in it. Then you take what you learned from the first funnel and translate it to the next one. The learning curve on that second funnel is way less because of what you learned on the first one, all the trial and error you went through on the first one. You max out the second funnel, rinse, repeat. Again, this isn't meant to be something that happens quickly. This might take months, if not, like a year if you're moving really slow. But I would say months is more realistic. So what does this ceiling actually mean? Usually it looks like resistance when scaling past a certain point. So let's say, for example, once you scale your call funnel past 10K a day, you have to hire more reps and it becomes more to manage. Your show rates drop. It's harder to keep an eye on more closers. Your lead quality starts to become spotty, etc. So it's like, again, like sometimes this just kind of happens and you can just take it at face value and be like, cool, like let's just not scale past this funnel. But if you really want like a reason, it can be hard to pinpoint, but here's like a few like things that could be happening. There's a certain cap of people who want to enter your ecosystem through X funnel. So again, we've kind of been talking about this, but like different people have different preferences. And maybe you sell and offer SAT prep coaching. And it's like, there's only so many people on earth who are interested in that offer, who also want to attend a live webinar about that offer. So maybe you're just reaching this cap where like, it's the same thing like with e-com brands. Like I know that at a certain point they start introducing more products because their CAC on one product becomes like they're almost bidding against themselves because there's only so many people in the market for one specific product. So then they use another product as like the entry gate to get into the brand's ecosystem. Then you buy their other stuff. It's the same thing. It's like, maybe there's only X amount of people in the world who want to learn about this SET prep offer that want to attend a live webinar, and you've maxed out that pocket. And every time you try to scale past it, you're just kind of like bidding against yourself because you're like overextending that pocket. Whereas like if you did a low ticket funnel, there's a whole new pocket of people who are interested in your same offer but don't want to show up to a webinar and they would rather sample you. So again, that's like a very practical explanation. Sometimes it's that you're trying to scale one message past its cap. So what I mean by one message is like the angle in the VSL. So let's say like, you have a crypto offer and you're scaling your one VSL past like 5-10K a day, and like the angle is like, the banks and the governments are accumulating. And again, kind of like similar to what I just said, it's like maybe there's only so many people on Facebook who are actually receptive to that message. And if you didn't even have to change the funnel, if you just did a separate VSL that was just a completely different angle, you all of a sudden unlock a different pocket of people who are interested in crypto, but they just don't care about that angle that you rode with on the first one. They just care about the second angle. So again, another like practical, like super practical explanation might be like your manager starts getting too overwhelmed and starts like becoming spotty when there's over like 50 to 70 new calls a day from the call funnel. So then, follow-up starts slacking, the setter starts slacking, all that kind of stuff. So again, if you want to like assign a reason to it, there's like 3 random reasons. Again, it could be anything, but I'm just trying to give you an example. So a ceiling could also even just be like risk associated. So like I said, if you're spending 10K a day on a call funnel and your show rate tanks, you probably wish you had diversified into different funnels and you didn't have all your eggs in one basket, because then it's like your show rate tanks, you're trying to figure out why, but then you're also burning $10,000 a day while you're figuring out why. And you probably wish that you had another funnel that you could push some spend into while you figure out your show rate issue. Or like, God forbid, you're spending 100K on a live webinar. And again, like for certain offers who are doing, millions of dollars a month in revenue, maybe 100K is a normal webinar budget. But let's say your offer owner, like their cat died that day and they just have a terrible performance, or like some tech issue happens, or like whatever it might be. Like the ceiling could also just be risk, in the sense of like diversifying your spend across different funnels also mitigates your risk on each of the funnels. So like I said before, a business that has revenue coming from Instagram, YouTube, paid referrals, just like everything, is way more sustainable than one that's just got only one channel for customers. And having these different channels usually has a spillover effect. It's the same logic, just with your different funnels. So again, I want to make this super clear. Do not try and launch and max out 2 or 3 funnels at the same time. Unless you have like a really cracked marketer who doesn't have a ton of clients and like can put a ton of bandwidth towards your specific account, you need to go one at a time, focus on maxing out each funnel as you go, and then just keep it stable and move on to the next. Realistically, you can move through like a 2 to 3 funnel scaling plan, like 3 to 6 months, depending on how good your sales team is and how quickly you move. So here's like this live example I was talking about of like an offer that I'm actually running right now. We essentially started from scratch, but it's like 90% paid traffic. I'm going to walk you through exactly the funnels that we started, the decision-making process, all that stuff. Okay, so first we started with the call funnel, and this allowed us to get all of the intel we needed to reposition the offer, figure out who on our sales team was good, who needed to go, and helped us get some stability and have calls on the calendar every single day. And in hindsight, I'm super glad that I started this offer with the call funnel, because we learned so much through the call funnel that would have just taken way too long to learn through webinars or through low ticket. So again, in hindsight, this was a great decision to start with the call funnel, because we got a ton of feedback that we needed to redo a lot of stuff on the offer side, redo a lot of stuff in terms of who we target, make sure our sales team like weed out some bad closers, validate that we had some good closers, all that kind of stuff. And with that call funnel, we were consistent around like 250K a month with just the call funnel. And the recurring theme like month after month was just that the sales cycles were way too long because it's a higher ticket offer. We have like a 30K ticket and we were essentially like fronting cash the first like 3 weeks of the month, and our ROAS would look terrible until like the 20th of the month. And then all of a sudden, like all the leads that we brought in from that month would all start closing like at the end of the month, and we would end it super profitable. And we just realized like, okay, our sales cycle is like 2 to 3 weeks, which is going to make scaling this very sketchy, because if we want to start scaling to like 100K a month in spend or 200K a month in spend, like we're going to be going in the hole like 150K or whatever the number is until we really start seeing closes roll in, just because the sales cycle is so long. So we tried a few cold webinars, but the unit economics just like weren't amazing. Like I said, you have a lot of drop off in a webinar funnel, and we were paying like $700 to like $1,000 per booked call from the webinar. When on the call funnel, we were consistently like sub $200. And in the few cold webinars that we ran, again, I'm not like ruling them out long term, but the closer said that they like didn't really prefer the webinar calls to the call funnel calls. So we're like, okay, like let's just not do the cold webinars right now and just figure out how to make the call funnel work. So we started running internal webinars, again, not cold, just internal, to speed up the sales cycle a bit and clean up some of the leads that got lost in the cracks. So like no shows, long-term follow-ups, etc. That got us to like 400K a month without raising spend on the call funnel. So now, and again, this is the exact scenario that I gave you as an example earlier. Next, we're adding low ticket into the mix because we're already doing the weekly internal webinars, and we would want to do those for the low ticket anyway. So now that weekly internal webinar essentially kills two birds with one stone, because we're cleaning up the call funnel leads and getting the low ticket buyers there. So we're adding low ticket in the mix, and we'll try to scale that to around the same level as the call funnel, like 3 to 5K a day. And the reason why I'm not just scaling the call funnel to the max is because of the sales cycle, like I said. So the thought process is like, okay, the low ticket buyer should have more intent, and we're going to be profitable on the low ticket funnel on its own as long as we do the unit economics right and our CPA is good. So like the low ticket funnel should be profitable self-standing, and then we're also going to be cleaning up a bunch of the buyers through the internal webinars. So it's like the call funnel is already working. The low ticket is essentially another call funnel, but just with a paywall in the middle, which should have higher intent on those leads. Then we're going to try to basically scale the low ticket funnel to around where the call funnel is. That should get us like close to $1 million a month. And then after the low ticket and the call funnel are both stable, we'll give cold webinars a try again and see if we can make the unit economics make sense, which I think we can. So again, like that's like exactly like a real example of what scaling into multiple funnels looks like, why I would do it, and why it ended up being a good decision, and kind of just like the whole thought process and decision-making process. So another thing to mention is we would have gathered this data and made these decisions a lot slower had we kept our spend low on those funnels initially. Like I see this all the time where people will kind of be scared to hit the gas just because they don't have the conviction in their approach or in their strategy. So they'll stay at like $600 a day on the call funnel like forever. And they're always just like playing small. And it's like, in this example, basically from the very beginning of launching the funnels, like I saw the leading indicators were good. The sales team feedback was fine. So we were spending like $2,000 a day on the call funnel basically immediately, which isn't a lot, but it's still like a decent amount of data to work with from day one. Same thing with the webinar. When we started doing the webinars, we didn't do like a little $5,000 test budget to like have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like we were like, okay, cool. Let's build this the right way. We already know what works for us on the call funnel. We have conviction in this. Let's go like 20K for the test budget on the first webinar, which again, isn't a lot for a webinar, but I see people trying to do this with a lot less. So that way, like when we give these things an actual shot, like you want to take a real swing at these things. You don't want to like half-ass it and then be like, okay, well, I spent $5,000 on this and it didn't work, but maybe it didn't work because I didn't spend enough, so let me just do like 7,000, and then you just keep staying in this like cycle. Like you have to actually like have some conviction when you do this. Use what you've learned in the call funnel or whatever your first funnel is to like actually go into it super confident in the positioning, like everything you do in the funnel, you're confident in, and actually give it a real swing. The reason why I say this, like I said, is because so many people have 1 foot in, 1 foot out when trying to make a new funnel, which only delays the process of gathering this data and making decisions. Again, let's revisit the checkpoints of scaling. So at 1K a day, you're kind of just finding proof of concept with the first funnel. You're refining the sales process, all that kind of stuff. You probably have like 20 to 50 live ads in the account, which is not necessarily even enough data to make any kind of real conclusions, but you're at least buying some data and you're in this like testing the waters phase. This is like the bare minimum you should be spending on a funnel. Like usually on a call funnel, I'll start at $700 a day, but really I'm at $1,000 a day within the first like week or so. But this is the bare minimum you should be spending to actually start determining if something is working or not. Or like, you know, $1,000 a day is obviously 30K a month. So maybe if you're doing webinars instead, you allocate 30K a month to a webinar, which might be 2 webinars of 15K each. Another thing to mention is that especially when you're in the beginning stages, the marketing to sales feedback loop is so important. Like, I want to be in communication with my setters, my closers, my sales manager, essentially on a daily basis to just like get my pulse on who's actually coming through this funnel and if we're like hitting the right pocket of people and if the messaging is good, all that kind of stuff. Because like you kind of have to go for that like close to the root cause of everything feedback in the very beginning, because like you're kind of just trying to figure things out. And again, this is like still the case for me on every new offer I run. Like I keep saying, I'm launching a new offer this week. I'm going to be talking to the sales manager and the salespeople like basically every single day for the first few days that I launch this, just making sure that everything is going the way it should. I know what's happening in the sales process so that way I can work back, or I can use all my learnings from the salespeople and work that back into the front end. So checkpoint number 2 is you're around 3K a day in spend, which is about 100K a month. At this point, you've seen some traction with the first funnel you're running and you're scaling into it. Again, at 3K a day, you should realistically only be running one funnel at this point. You've probably got 50 to 100 ads live in the account. You're maybe bringing in new setters, new closers, which has its own temporary growing pains. But at this point, you should be profitable, learning what's working, learning what's not. And your marketing to sales feedback loop is still very important at this stage because you're not yet at the point where you're like super confident in the marketing and sales process, at least probably. At 5K a day, at this point, you're super confident in your first funnel and you're probably assessing when or if you need a second funnel. In the example I just gave above, if we didn't have this constraint of long sales cycles, in this example, I would just kept scaling the call funnel because our numbers looked really good, but the sales cycle is kind of what was killing it. So at this point, at 5K a day, you've got 100 plus ads live in the account. You've got real diversity, different formats, all that kind of stuff. Your sales team should be in a groove when it comes to handling and closing leads from your first funnel, which gives you the confidence you need to keep raising spend. So let's say in the beginning, like, you know, if it's a new offer, you've never done paid before, and, you know, your sales people haven't really closed paid before, getting them to close like call funnel leads might be a bit tricky in the beginning, but by the time you get to 5K a day, like they should all be in a good groove. Same thing with webinar, low ticket, whatever it might be. Like your salespeople should be in a very good routine of like they feel confident with the leads coming from this funnel. And like for a call funnel, for example, you've dialed in all the back-end selling systems and all the sales assets to the point where it's aiding them and it's helping them get leads that are framed properly and they're able to actually close them. Or with the webinar, you know, you've perfected the pitch so much and like everything pre-call and all that stuff to the point where you're confident in it. Or low ticket, same thing. So what I'm trying to say is like at 5K a day, you should feel like you're near perfect on that first funnel and you really have confidence in it. So at this point, the marketing and sales feedback loop is still important, but like I said, at this point, like you should have a good feel of what's working and what direction to keep moving towards. And then at 10K a day, you've probably got multiple funnels that are both running very smoothly. You're spending 300K a month at this point, so you should be bringing back around $1 million a month. You've got hundreds of ads live and you have tons of diversity in your account. Your sales team is growing, your management's dialed in, your marketer is in a very good pocket of like understanding the messaging. He or she has a good pulse on all the funnels being run, all that kind of stuff. And like, this is where you have like the well-oiled machine. I would say like the well-oiled machine starts to like peak out at like 5K a day, but really at 10K a day, like it needs to be a well-oiled machine. So this is how everything should work on paper. Again, this is like a course, you know, this is how everything's supposed to work. But in the real world, this brings us to probably the most important part of this entire course. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. Being able to find and fix constraints fast. This is literally the most important part of this course, by far. So in your journey of scaling to $1 million a month on paid traffic, you will encounter countless instances of BS. Everything from ads bringing in the wrong people, to pickup rate issues, show rate issues, the same objections over and over, closers not being able to get deals over the line, low cash up front that breaks your unit economics, needing to pivot your offer and make it higher ticket. Then for some reason, you think it's a good idea to try webinars now. Then you switch funnels and your webinar opt-in rate blows. And then your webinar show rate breaks. And then you fix the webinar show rate and your booking rate sucks. And then you fix the booking rate but your show rate to the call drops. Then you fix both and your closers forget how to close. And then you switch to low ticket and you get no sales on the front end. So you reposition the product and have to redo the ads. Then you start getting sales but your booking percentage is too low. Then you fix the booking flow and redo your automations. And then your closers say nobody has money. So they have to fix their sales process and realign the messaging on the front end. Like, you get what I'm saying? And this, to me, is how you know I've been doing what I've been doing for a long time. Because I've seen fucking everything. And that's basically the only constant and the only guarantee in any of this entire game is that you're going to have issues, 100%. Literally, all of this boils down, like all of like launching and scaling info products and this whole thing boils down to is launching something, finding the constraint, iterating to fix the constraint, testing again until it's fixed, waiting till the next constraint pops up, and then repeating. So with that being said, there's like a couple layers to this whole thing, so we're going to go into this. You need to actually be able to diagnose these constraints properly and know what to do when. So a lot of people will like have an issue like, I don't know, like for example, the show rate. And they'll be like, oh my God, the show rate sucks because, the offer's bad or the ads are bad or like whatever. But maybe it's just like that your setters aren't actually texting the people in time. The text that they're sending is really vague, and you don't have anything pre-call that's actually like interactive or builds any intent. So what I'm saying is like you need to like not just have an issue and freak out and start just like throwing random things at it. You need to know how to actually figure out like what bucket your constraint or your issue falls into, and then what to do when that happens. So again, just like common ones, and this isn't everything, but usually like things kind of boil down to offer problems, messaging problems, media buying problems, which I would say are more rare if you actually have someone who knows what they're doing. Actual funnel problems in the sense that you literally just chose the wrong funnel, which again, I would say is like slightly more rare. If you did phase 2 properly, you shouldn't have that. Landing page conversion problems, which are super common, as in your funnel just straight up isn't meeting KPI. Middle of funnel problems like your pre-call process, your pre-webinar process, whatever, your sales process, and then your closure problems. So again, there's more, but these are just like a few. Again, the very first step in all of this is that you can actually diagnose where the constraint is, not where you feel that it is, and attack it. And the easiest way to be able to diagnose quickly is to have all of your data organized properly. So you need to be able to look at the funnel and say like, okay, my constraint is on the show rate. Let me look at everything closest to the show rate, because let's say your show rate is the constraint. You need to know, first of all, if the right people are actually coming through your funnel. And the way that you would figure that out is like, of the people who do show, like, are they the right people? Of the people who your setters talk to, like, are they the right people? Cool. So if you are getting the right people through the funnel, but they're just not showing, you can kind of go process of elimination. Like, okay, it's probably not the ad side of things. It's probably not the VSL or anything on the page. It's probably everything that happens in between them booking a call and the call being live that's killing the show rate. So let's go look at the pre-call emails, at the retargeting ads, at the confirmation page, at what the setters are saying, all that kind of stuff, as opposed to just being like, oh my God, the show rate is cooked, so my offer sucks. That's an example of just like jumping to a conclusion. So you need to be able to actually work yourself through the process of elimination, actually identify constraints. Identifying a constraint is the first step, but actually knowing what to do is what actually like solves it. So that's a whole different problem. So for example, if your ads are performing well, like all the ad metrics are good, the click-through rate, the CPMs, all that stuff, but your cost per call, cost per register, and cost per sale, like whatever your cost per result is too high, you need to check the landing page for congruency, you need to look at the VSL consumption, application drop-off, all that kind of stuff. Like, like, okay, my ads are doing good, but my cost per result is too high, so the bottleneck is probably on the page. And if you look at everything on the page, and there's nothing really that stands out, it's like, okay, maybe I'm just attracting the wrong person. There's like an incongruency from who is watching the ad and then what they're seeing on the page. So first you attack the page, and then if it's not on the page, then you change the messaging to essentially be more congruent. Well, like actually in that example, you would more so just want to change the page to be more congruent with what's in the ads. But either way, that's an example of like the thought process. Example number 2 is that your page starts converting, but setters speak to people on the phone. They don't know anything about the offer or the business model. So again, that's a clear messaging issue. You need to go rework the ads, the VSL, all that kind of stuff. And like I said, that's a messaging issue, or you're just straight up targeting the wrong awareness level, like too problem aware, and they just don't understand like what's going on. So go for more solution where people have already heard of the thing or the business model that you're offering. Example number 3 is that your closers say that people are coming out to the sales call just looking for information. What you would do there is you would have better sales assets, potentially rework the setting process, and dial in the back-end selling systems. This is more of like a middle of funnel issue. So I'm trying to just like take these random problems that I made up and just like put them into a bucket so you know kind of like where to look. Issue number 4 is that your closers are getting like the right people on the phone. Everyone's well framed, but they're just not closing. So it's either a closer skill issue or potentially an offer problem, in the sense that like the offer is just not good enough or sexy enough, and you need to kind of review the calls to determine is it one or the other, or what could I be doing in the pre-call assets, middle of funnel, to make it easier on them. Last example, your front end numbers on ads just suck no matter what. And it's not even that they're not converting on the page. It's like the ad metrics suck and the page metrics suck. It's usually just like an offer problem or potentially a messaging problem. Because if the ads are congruent to the page and just both aren't converting, it's probably either just like you're conveying the offer wrong, or the offer just sucks. And like potentially the niche positioning, whatever, everything from phase 1. So again, the whole reason why this is important is because some people will have one of these issues and then they'll just like scrap the whole funnel or think it's something that their media buyer's doing or some other random thing. But the more that you encounter these situations and the more that you like overcome them and actually like get through this stuff successfully, the more experienced you become at solving constraints and the more it just becomes like a part of the game. It's like, dude, I know no matter what offer I launch, what funnel I launch, there's going to be some constraint. I've never had it, or like I've had offers that are pretty easy to scale, but very rarely do you have it where just like everything fucking works from try number one. And you know, you're going to have constraints no matter what. At this point, we've covered how to find constraints, how to figure out the solution to those constraints. But the third thing that you might just be thinking like, oh, okay, I know the constraints and I know like what to do. But the third thing that no one talks about is how quickly you actually apply the solutions. So this is something I like to call the iteration loop. It's from a talk that I gave at Jeremy Haynes Mastermind. If you want to watch the video for that, that's on my channel, and I kind of talk about this a bit more in depth. But essentially, like all of these constraints that you have here, like they all involve you taking action and doing new things. And what screws so many people over is that they take action like so slowly. Like they'll know that their show rate sucks, or they'll know that their page isn't converting properly, or they'll know like whatever, like they'll know what the constraint is. And if they're knowledgeable enough, they'll actually know like what they even need to do to fix it, but they just won't do it quick enough. And it sounds like so dumb, but it's just so true. And I've seen it so many times. Like the quicker that you can get through your constraints, the quicker you make progress. So like for some people I've worked with, if I need them to do a new funnel, or you know, we need to change the messaging, or we need to change the sales process, or we need to write it, like film a new VSL, whatever it might be. Like each of these little loops will take them like weeks, which means that like getting from here to here takes months. Whereas like some people I worked with, like if we need a new funnel, it's built in an hour. If we need to change the messaging, they want the ads today so they can film them tomorrow. If they need to make iterations to the sales process, they'll meet with the sales team that same day and implement the new sales process tomorrow. If we need a new VSL, I'm scripting it for them and they're filming it the next day. Like those are the kind of offers and the kind of teams that actually make progress super quick. I want to give you guys a real example of one of my clients. Like I'm not going to lie, not every single offer I ever take on is like swimming from the beginning. Like everything's just great. Like this is by far one of the hardest I've ever worked on one of these offers. And we've went through so many iterations. Like, oh my God, we went through so many different VSLs, so many different awareness levels, different funnels, changing the sales process, like everything. But the one thing I will say is like now we're all super confident that we've cracked it. And like, we're just going to basically just go up and to the right for the foreseeable future. And obviously there's going to be new constraints, but like we feel very confident in like where we're at and the trajectory, and like we're already seeing the results. But it's like we did in a couple months what legitimately would have taken other people 6 months plus. And I'm not even exaggerating, because like the speed of moving through the iterations was, it felt like I was like a chicken with my head cut off for a couple months. But like for this offer specifically, not for everyone, just for like this one person. But like now we're at the point where we're super confident what we're doing. We know that it's working because we're seeing the results. Like we're profitable and like everything is kind of working the way it should be. And again, like I said, if it was anyone else doing this stuff or just like a slow client, like we would still be at, you know, iteration number 3 of like 15 that we had to make. So point being is like having constraints is inevitable, and you're probably going to have new constraints frequently. The biggest thing that you can do is move through these iterations quickly. So you need to know how to find your constraint, how to actually pinpoint what needs to be changed, then what to do, and then you need to do it quickly. This is like the ultimate big idea of this whole course. What takes some offers 6 months to iterate through takes others 6 weeks. And this is literally what separates elite offers from mediocre. This to me is the single biggest thing that separates people who do millions of dollars a month from people who do hundreds of thousands. It's literally this. Obviously, like it's kind of the whole like lead up to this part of the course as well. But like this is the biggest thing I want you to take away. Because at a certain point, you learn enough. You know what to do when, but the speed of execution and actually like how well you execute is what separates good from great. So now like at this point in the course, whether you don't have the knowledge yet, you don't understand your real constraints, like maybe you do actually understand your real constraints, but you just don't know how to fix them, or you know exactly what to do, you just don't want to or don't know how to execute. Like if you're an offer owner, you're like, yeah, like I know my show rate sucks, I know my offer isn't good, I just don't really want to do it myself. The most valuable thing that you can do is have someone over your shoulder who's been there and done that And obviously, if you're at this point in the video, I think you're pretty sold on that being me. So if you are an offer owner or an operator and you either want help with like everything I've talked about in this video and so much more, like doing it hands-on for your clients, the way I describe my operator clients is it's almost like I'm doing their homework with them on all their different subjects, because some of my best operators, like they have 3, 4, 5 clients, and I'll get on a call with them every single week and we'll walk through exactly what needs to be done for each of their clients, and they leave that call with the exact clarity. Or if you're an offer owner who just wants someone who's worked on dozens and dozens of info products, done tens of millions of dollars in revenue for my clients, working directly on your offer, just click the link down below, book a call with me, or if you want to just DM me on Instagram, you can do that too. But yeah, the page looks just like this. So quick recap of everything we went over in this course today. I appreciate you guys staying to the end, however many of you did. You learned exactly how to craft $1 million a month offer and an offer ladder. You learned exactly how to choose the funnels you should be running traffic to and how to construct your funnel to give you the best chance of being profitable from paid traffic on day one. You learned how to launch paid ads for your offer, and then you learned how to scale into multiple funnels and ramp your ad spend to 10K a day plus. Anything you feel that I left out or you're still wanting to learn, comment below and I'll make a video about it. But yeah, guys, I appreciate you being here for this one. Please, if you stayed to this point in the video, leave a like, drop a comment. If you want to work with me, book a call, and yeah, talk to you guys next time.